Take that fake medal off right now, you fraud. Richard Brennan's voice cut through the VFW hall like a knife. Every head turned. The city councilman stood 3 feet from Maggie Sullivan, his finger jabbing toward her chest, toward the pale blue ribbon and gold star resting against her worn flannel shirt. "You're a disgrace," he said louder. "Wearing stolen valor like some kind of costume jewelry. You think you can just walk in here and disrespect real heroes?" Maggie didn't move, didn't speak, just met his eyes with a calm that came from places he couldn't imagine. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and stay with us until the very end of this incredible story. Comment below with your city so we can see how far this story has traveled. Now let's continue. The veterans lining the folding chairs along the wall went silent. Someone's coffee cup stopped halfway to their mouth. The American flag hanging behind the makeshift podium seemed to droop in the sudden tension. Maggie Sullivan had been standing near the back wall, same place she always stood during these Monday morning veteran gatherings. She was 55, silver hair, pulled back in a simple ponytail, lines around her eyes that spoke of sun and sleeplessness in equal measure. Her jeans were clean but old. Her flannel shirt had been her husband's before the cancer took him, and around her neck, resting just below her collarbone, was the Medal of Honor. "Did you hear me?" Brennan stepped closer. He was younger, maybe 45, with the kind of smooth face that had never missed a meal or a night's sleep. His suit probably cost more than Maggie's monthly rent. "I said, take it off." "I heard you," Maggie said quietly. "Then do it. Now." A young Marine veteran named Tommy Ortiz stood up from his chair. He'd done 2 tours in Iraq, came back with shrapnel scars and nightmares. He'd been one of the first people Maggie helped when he showed up at the Veteran Center 3 years ago, lost and angry. "Mr. Brennan, you need to sit down, son." Brennan didn't even look at him. "This doesn't concern you." "Sir, I said sit." Brennan's voice took on an edge. "Unless you want the city council to reconsider the center's funding next quarter." Tommy's jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists, but he sat down. Maggie caught his eye and gave the smallest shake of her head. Not worth it. She'd spent 30 years in the Navy learning when to fight and when to stand still. This wasn't Tommy's battle. Brennan turned back to her. "You know what you are. You're a thief. That's military property you're wearing, and unless you can prove right now that you earned it, I'm calling the police and having you arrested for stolen valor." "The medal is authorized," Maggie said. He laughed, actually laughed. "Authorized by who? Your imagination." "Lady, I chair the Veterans Affairs Committee for this city. I've worked with the VA for 8 years. I know every Medal of Honor recipient in this state, and you're not one of them." "There are things you don't know." "Oh, I know plenty." He pulled out his phone. "I know you work at Donnelly's Hardware. I know you live alone in that little rental on Maple Street. I know you volunteer here because you've got nothing better to do with your time. What I don't know is where you got the nerve to walk around wearing this country's highest military honor like it's some kind of yard sale necklace." The words landed like slaps. Maggie felt her hands start to tremble, not from fear, but from something else. Something old and deep that she'd learned to keep locked away. The fluorescent lights overhead suddenly felt too bright. The room too small. "Mr. Brennan," said Frank Martinez, the VFW hall manager. He was 72, Vietnam veteran, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. "Maybe we should... Frank, do you know if she's legit?" Brennan wheeled on him. "Have you verified her service record? Her medals? Or did you just let any random person walk in here and play dress up?" Frank's weathered face flushed. "I don't need to verify." "That's what I thought. Nobody's checked. Nobody's asked questions." Brennan turned back to the small crowd. "This is exactly the problem. We get so caught up in being politically correct, in not wanting to offend anyone, that we forget to actually protect the honor these decorations represent." An older woman named Dorothy, whose son had died in Afghanistan, spoke up from her wheelchair. "Richard, that's enough." "No, Dorothy, it's not enough. Your son earned a Bronze Star, a real Bronze Star that he died for. And we're supposed to sit here while this woman parades around wearing something she probably bought off eBay." "You don't know that," Dorothy said, her voice shaking. "Then let her prove otherwise." Brennan crossed his arms. Right here, right now. Show us the documentation. Show us the citation. Hell, tell us what you supposedly did to earn it. The room held its breath. Maggie could feel every eye on her, could feel the weight of the metal against her chest. Not the physical weight, but everything it carried. The memory of dust and blood, the sound of helicopters, the feeling of someone else's life pumping out between her fingers. I don't have to prove anything to you, she said. Yes, you do. Federal law requires. Federal law protects my right to wear it. Not if it's fake. Brennan's face was getting red now. You know what, I'm done asking nicely. He reached for the medal. Time did something strange then. It always did when Maggie's mind went back to that place. The VFW hall didn't disappear exactly, but it became translucent like a photograph slowly fading. And underneath it, bleeding through like a palimpsest, was Fallujah. October 2004. She was 34 years old. Hospital corpsman, first class, attached to 1st Marine Division, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. They called her Doc, the way Marines always called their corpsmen. She'd been in country for 6 months, had seen things that used to wake her up screaming until her husband held her and told her she was safe. She was home. She was okay. The convoy had been moving through the city outskirts when the RPG hit. She could still feel the concussive wave the way it punched the air from her lungs. Could still hear Sergeant Morrison shouting, "Corpsman up!" before the words were drowned out by automatic weapons fire. Could still see the 3 Marines down in the street exposed, bleeding, dying. "Ma'am, I'm warning you." Brennan's hand was 6 inches from the metal when Tommy Ortiz stepped between them. "Don't touch her," Tommy said. "Move, kid." "Sir, with all respect, you need to step back." "Or what?" Brennan's face twisted. "You going to assault a city councilman in front of 20 witnesses? That'll look great for the veterans community." Tommy's fists clenched tighter. The scars on his neck, the ones from the IED that killed his best friend, stood out white against his tan skin. "Tommy," Maggie said softly, "it's okay." "It's not okay, Doc." Doc. The word hit her like another concussion wave. That's what all the young veterans called her at the center. Doc. They didn't know why, didn't know where she'd earned the title. They just knew she understood. Knew she'd been there wherever there was. Knew she could help them carry the weight. "I can handle this," she told him. "No offense, but you shouldn't have to." "Tommy, please." He looked at her for a long moment, then stepped aside. But he didn't sit down. None of them did. The whole room was standing now, a wall of veterans at her back. Brennan reached for the medal again. This time his fingers actually brushed the ribbon. And Maggie's hand came up and caught his wrist. Not hard, not aggressive, just firm. The grip of someone who'd held shattered bones together and pulled grown men from burning vehicles. "Mr. Brennan," she said, her voice still quiet but different now. Harder. "You can question my service. You can question my honor. You can call the police and make a scene. But you will not touch this medal. You will not disrespect what it represents. Not while I'm breathing." He tried to pull his wrist back. Couldn't. Maggie's fingers were like iron. "Let go of me," he said. "When you step back." "I'm calling the police right now. This is assault. This is defense." She held his eyes. "And if you actually knew anything about the Medal of Honor, you'd know that laying hands on it without permission is closer to assault than what I'm doing." "You're insane." "Maybe. 30 years in combat zones will do that." "Combat zones." He actually sneered. "You expect me to believe that you're a woman. A middle-aged woman who works at a hardware store. You're nobody." The words hung in the air like smoke. Nobody. Maggie let go of his wrist. "You're right," she said. "I am nobody. I'm exactly what you see a 55-year-old widow who stocks shelves and helps veterans fill out paperwork. I live in a rental. I drive a truck that's older than some of the kids at this center. I buy my clothes at Walmart. I am completely, totally, absolutely ordinary." She paused. "Except for one day. One afternoon in Fallujah when I ran into machine gun fire 6 times to pull out Marines who were dying in the street. When I took shrapnel to my ribs and kept working. When I took a rifle round through my shoulder and wouldn't get on the helicopter until every one of my wounded was evacuated first. When I did things that earned me this medal, not because I was brave, but because those Marines were somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's father, and they deserved to go home. The room was utterly silent. Brennan stared at her. If that's true, it's true. Then prove it. I don't have to prove it. The medal proves it. The citation proves it. The fact that the President of the United States put this around my neck in the Oval Office proves it. Your ignorance doesn't make my service disappear. Anyone can make up a story. Frank, Maggie said, not looking away from Brennan. Would you get my phone from my purse? Frank hurried to the back table where she'd left her ancient canvas bag. He dug out a flip phone, the kind they didn't even sell anymore, and brought it to her. Thank you. Maggie took it, flipped it open one-handed, scrolled through the contacts. Mr. Brennan, since you're so concerned about verification, let me help you out. She pressed a number and put the phone to her ear. Who are you calling? Brennan asked. Someone who can answer your questions. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, crisp and professional. Admiral Harrison's office, Lieutenant Rodriguez speaking. Rodriguez, it's Master Chief Sullivan. Is the Admiral available? A pause. Then Master Chief. Hold 1 second, he'll want to take this. Brennan's face had gone from red to white. Admiral. Maggie held up one finger. Wait. Maggie Sullivan. A new voice came on the line, deeper, warm, with genuine pleasure. It's been 6 months. How are you? How's that shoulder? Hi, Admiral. Sorry to bother you on a Monday morning. I need a small favor. Name it. I've got a situation here at the Veterans Center. Local city councilman named Richard Brennan is accusing me of stolen valor. Says I'm a fraud. Wants me arrested. I was wondering if you might have time to make a call to give me the address. Sir, you don't have to. Maggie. The Admiral's voice went formal. Give me the address. I'll be there in 45 minutes. You're in Norfolk. That's 2 hours away. Then I'll be there in 2 hours. But I'm coming. Nobody disrespects one of my Medal of Honor recipients. Nobody. Understood? Yes, sir. Who else is there? Any other veterans? About 20. Good people. Then tell them to hold the line. I'm inbound. The line went dead. Maggie closed the phone and looked at Brennan. His face had gone from white to gray. That wasn't, he started. Admiral James Harrison, 4 stars, commander of Naval Forces Atlantic, former CO of the hospital ship Mercy. He was a lieutenant commander when he escorted me to the Medal of Honor ceremony. We've stayed in touch. You're bluffing. In about 2 hours, you'll find out. I don't believe you. Tommy Ortiz pulled out his own phone, typed something, turned the screen toward Brennan. Here's Admiral Harrison's official bio from the Navy website. Here's a photo. That who she just called. Brennan looked at the screen. The color drained even further from his face. I need to make a call, he said. You do that, Maggie said. He pulled out his phone and walked toward the door, already dialing. They could hear his voice rising as he stepped outside. Jim, it's Richard. We have a situation. I need you at the VFW hall right now. Yes, Judge Morrison. Right now. Dorothy wheeled herself closer to Maggie. Honey, why didn't you just tell him from the start? Because I shouldn't have to, Maggie said quietly. The medal speaks for itself, always has. The problem isn't the medal, it's the people who don't want to see it. Still calling an admiral seems... I didn't want to. Admiral Harrison's a busy man. But Mr. Brennan left me no choice. She looked at the older woman. Dorothy, you know your son's Bronze Star? Of course. What would you do if someone called it fake if they tried to rip it off your wall? Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. I'd kill them. Exactly. That's how I feel about this. Not for me, I don't care what people think of me. But for the Marines who bled, the Marines who died. This medal isn't mine. It's theirs. and I won't let anyone dishonor their memory." The door burst open. Brennan came back in, followed by another man, older 60s, wearing an expensive suit and the kind of expression that came from years of being the most important person in any room. "That's Judge Morrison," Frank whispered to Tommy. "County court. Handles everything from traffic tickets to family law. He and Brennan play golf together." Judge Morrison surveyed the room with barely concealed contempt. His eyes landed on Maggie and the medal, and something like disgust crossed his face. "You're the one claiming to be a Medal of Honor recipient," he said without preamble. "Master Chief Petty Officer Maggie Sullivan, U.S. Navy, retired," she said. "I didn't ask your rank. I asked if you're claiming to have earned that medal." "I'm not claiming anything. I earned it." "Then you'll have no problem proving it in court." He pulled out his phone, made a call. "Sheila, it's Morrison. I need you to file an emergency motion. Improper display of military decoration. I'll email you the details in 5 minutes. Schedule it for my docket Wednesday morning." He hung up. "You're taking me to court," Maggie said. "You're going to show documentation. You're going to provide your DD-214, your service record, official citation, everything. And if you can't, you're going to face charges for stolen valor under federal law. That's Title 18, Section 704 of the U.S. Code, in case you were wondering." "I know the law." "Do you? Because that law allows for fines and imprisonment. And I guarantee you, if you're lying about this, I will push for the maximum sentence." Tommy stepped forward again. "Judge Morrison, this is wrong. She shouldn't have to." "Young man, are you a lawyer?" "No, sir." "Then be quiet." Morrison turned back to Maggie. "Wednesday, 9 a.m. County Courthouse, Room 3. Bring every piece of documentation you have. Bring witnesses if you have them. Bring anything that proves you're not a fraud. Because right now, looking at you, I see exactly what Richard sees: an ordinary middle-aged woman who made a very serious mistake." "I see." Maggie's voice was perfectly calm. "And if I prove I'm telling the truth, then you'll receive an apology and the charges will be dismissed. Will you apologize?" "Excuse me. You just called me a fraud, called my service a mistake. When I prove you wrong, will you apologize?" Morrison's face hardened. "Let's worry about Wednesday first." "I'm worried about it right now, because Judge Morrison, with all respect, you just did something extremely dangerous." "Is that a threat?" "No, sir. It's a warning. You just challenged the honor of a combat veteran in front of 20 other combat veterans. You just called into question the single most sacred military decoration this country can award. You did this based on nothing but your own assumptions about what a hero should look like." She stepped closer to him. The room seemed to shrink. "I've spent 30 years learning how to save lives, how to stop bleeding, how to keep people alive when everything and everyone around them is trying to kill them. I've held dying Marines. I've carried dead ones. I've lived with nightmares for 20 years that would break most people, and I've done it quietly, without complaint, without looking for recognition or reward." Her voice dropped lower. "But you decided that because I'm an ordinary-looking woman who works at a hardware store, I couldn't possibly be who I say I am. You decided that heroism has to look a certain way, be a certain age, come from a certain background. You decided that I'm not good enough to wear this medal." She held his eyes. "Wednesday morning, you're going to learn something, Judge Morrison. You're going to learn that heroes don't always look like heroes, that courage doesn't announce itself, that the person stocking light bulbs at the hardware store might have more courage in her little finger than you'll ever have in your entire body." Morrison's jaw worked. "Wednesday, 9 a.m. Don't be late." He turned and walked out. Brennan followed, throwing one more look back at Maggie. Part anger, part something else. Fear, maybe. When the door closed behind them, the room erupted. "Doc, that was incredible. You really called an Admiral. Wednesday, we're all coming to court." Maggie held up her hand. The room quieted. "No," she said. "You're not coming to court. You're not making this into a circus. This is between me and them. But we want to support you. You support me by living your lives, by taking care of yourselves, by being the veterans this country needs." She looked at each of them. "This medal, it's important. But you know what's more important? You. every single one of you. You served. You sacrificed. Some of you are still serving right here, helping the next generation get through what we went through. That matters more than any court case. At least let us testify, Frank said. Frank, I appreciate it, but I don't think it'll come to that. Why not? She smiled a small, sad smile. Because Admiral Harrison doesn't make empty promises. If he said he'd be here in 2 hours, he'll be here. And when he arrives, everything changes. Bata. Tommy walked Maggie to her truck after the meeting broke up. The parking lot was half empty, morning sun making everything look washed out and tired. Doc, he said, as she unlocked the door of her ancient Ford F-150, why do you let people treat you like that? Like what? Like you're nothing, like you're invisible. She paused her hand on the door handle. Tommy, you know what the hardest part of coming home was. What? Not the nightmares, not the pain, not even losing your husband to cancer 5 years after I got back, though that came close. She looked at him. The hardest part was realizing that nobody cared. Nobody wanted to know where I'd been or what I'd done. They wanted the old Maggie back, the quiet Maggie, the one who smiled and nodded and didn't make people uncomfortable with her stories. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's reality. You know it too. That's why you come to the center. Because it's the only place where people understand. Tommy looked away. I can't sleep most nights. I know. I see their faces. The guys who didn't make it. I know. Does it ever get better? Maggie was quiet for a long moment. It gets different. You learn to carry it. You learn to function. You learn to live a life that honors what they gave up. But better no. It doesn't get better. It just gets manageable. That's bleak. That's honest. She climbed into the truck. Tommy promised me something. What? Wednesday. No matter what happens, you don't do anything stupid. You don't get arrested trying to defend me. You don't make a scene. You just sit there and stay quiet. Doc, promise me. I've saved enough lives. I don't want to watch you throw yours away because of me. He hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Good. She started the engine. It turned over with a rough cough. Now go home. Get some sleep. Take care of yourself. You too, Doc. She drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot, watching her truck disappear around the corner. Yeah. That night, Maggie sat in her small rental house with the lights off, her dog Scout lying at her feet. The German Shepherd was getting old, 11 years graying around the muzzle, but he still followed her from room to room like he knew she needed the company. The metal lay on the coffee table in front of her, catching the faint light from the street lamp outside. She hadn't looked at the citation in years, kept it in a safety deposit box at the bank along with her DD-214 and the other paperwork from her service. But she didn't need to look at it. She knew every word by memory. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty. The words were supposed to mean something, were supposed to capture what happened that day. But they couldn't. Nothing could. No citation, no ceremony, no medal could explain what it felt like to run toward gunfire when every instinct screamed to run away, to put your hands on a torn artery and know that if you let go, someone died. To make the choice over and over to go back, even when you knew the next bullet might have your name on it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter, Rachel. Mom, someone sent me a video. You're in it. At the VFW. What's going on? Maggie stared at the message. She and Rachel hadn't spoken in 3 years. Not since the argument about her husband's funeral, when Rachel had accused her of being cold, of not crying, enough of not showing the proper grief. Rachel didn't understand that Maggie had learned long ago how to bury her emotions so deep they couldn't hurt her. Didn't understand that showing weakness in combat meant people died, and that lesson was impossible to unlearn. She typed back, "Nothing important. How are you?" The phone rang immediately. Rachel. Maggie let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, another text, Mom, you can't ignore this. That's the Medal of Honor. I looked it up. There are only 19 women who've ever received it. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. Another call, another voicemail. Then I'm coming to the court date. Wednesday, right? I'll be there. Don't. I'm your daughter. Rachel, please. This isn't your fight. Mom, for once in your life, let someone help you. Maggie put the phone face down on the table and closed her eyes. Scout whined and put his head on her lap. She scratched behind his ears, feeling the familiar texture of his fur, the solid warmth of his presence. It's okay, boy, she whispered. Everything's okay. But it wasn't. And Wednesday was coming. Wednesday morning came cold and gray. Maggie stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 5 a.m., the metal already around her neck. She hadn't slept, hadn't even tried. Scout had stayed pressed against her legs all night, sensing her tension the way dogs do. Her hands shook as she buttoned her shirt, the only dress shirt she owned, white and simple, bought at Target 3 years ago for her husband's funeral. The tremor wasn't fear. It was something older, something that lived in her nerves and wouldn't leave. The doctors at the VA called it hypervigilance. She called it Tuesday. The phone buzzed. Rachel again. I'm on my way. Be there by 8:30. Maggie typed back with fumbling fingers. Rachel, don't. Please. Too late. Already left. She put the phone down and stared at herself in the mirror. 55 years old. Gray hair that she'd stopped coloring after David died. Lines around her eyes and mouth that came from squinting in the sun and biting back screams in the dark. She looked exactly like what Judge Morrison had called her ordinary. The metal looked anything but ordinary against her plain shirt. It caught the bathroom light and threw it back the gold star, seeming to pulse with its own light. She touched it with one finger, felt the cool metal, the texture of the engraving. Conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty. Above and beyond, she whispered to her reflection. What a joke. She hadn't felt gallant that day in Fallujah. She'd felt terrified. Every step toward those wounded Marines had been against every survival instinct she possessed. Her body had screamed at her to stay down, stay safe, let someone else go. But there wasn't anyone else. There was only her and 3 Marines bleeding out in the street, and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Scout barked from the kitchen, his breakfast bark insistent and regular as clockwork. Coming boy, she called. She fed him, checked his water, gave him his arthritis medication wrapped in cheese. Routine. Normalcy. The things that kept her tethered to this world instead of the one that lived in her nightmares. At 7:30, she climbed into her truck. The engine coughed twice before catching. She needed to replace the starter, but that cost money she didn't have. The hardware store paid her $12 an hour. Her Navy pension covered rent and utilities. Everything else was negotiable. The courthouse was downtown, a gray stone building that had been impressive in 1952 and was now just tired. She parked 3 blocks away because the closer lots cost money. Walked slowly because her hip-ached legacy of carrying a 200-pound Marine 100 yards under fire. The courthouse steps were crowded, veterans everywhere. Tommy Ortiz stood at the front, flanked by Frank Martinez and at least 30 others. They wore their uniforms, their unit patches, their service ribbons. Some stood with canes, others in wheelchairs. One man was missing both legs below the knee. Doc, Tommy said as she approached. We told you we were coming. I told you not to. Yeah, well, we don't take orders from you anymore. You're retired. He tried to smile. Besides, this is what veterans do. We show up for each other. Dorothy was there too, her wheelchair parked next to the ramp. She wore her son's bronze star pinned to her jacket. When she saw Maggie, tears started down her wrinkled cheeks. Don't cry, Maggie said softly, bending down to hug her. I can't help it. What they're doing to you, what they said about you. It's okay. It's not okay. My Jeffrey gave his life, and that judge acts like your service doesn't matter because you're alive to defend it. What kind of backward logic is that? Maggie had no answer. She squeezed Dorothy's hand and moved toward the door. A news van was parked across the street. A reporter was doing a stand-up camera pointed at the courthouse steps. Maggie caught fragments of the broadcast. Unprecedented case of alleged stolen valor involving a woman claiming to be a Medal of Honor recipient. She pushed through the doors before she could hear more. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor. Room 3, just like Judge Morrison had said. The hallway outside was packed with people. More veterans, courthouse staff, lawyers waiting for other cases. A low murmur of conversation that died when Maggie walked past. She felt their eyes on the metal, felt their judgment, their curiosity, their doubt. The courtroom doors were closed. A bailiff stood outside, burly guy with kind eyes who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I need to ask you to remove that necklace before entering the courtroom." "No," Maggie said. "Ma'am, Judge Morrison was very specific. No decorations, no jewelry, court decorum." "This isn't jewelry. It's the Medal of Honor. Federal law specifically authorizes its wear." The bailiff shifted his weight. "Ma'am, I don't want to have to." "Then don't." She met his eyes. "I'm going to walk through those doors wearing this medal. You can try to stop me, or you can let me pass. Your choice." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the veterans filling the hallway behind her, then back at her face. He opened the door. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Rows of wooden benches, a judge's bench elevated at the front, an American flag and a state flag flanking it. The air smelled like old paper and floor polish. Judge Morrison was already on the bench, talking to his court clerk. He looked up when Maggie entered and his face went dark. "Bailiff," he snapped, "I gave you specific instructions." The bailiff, following Maggie inside, said nothing. "I asked you to remove unauthorized decorations from any person entering my courtroom. Your Honor, did you or did you not receive those instructions?" "I did, sir." "Then why is that woman still wearing that necklace?" The bailiff's jaw worked. "Because she refused to remove it, sir." "Then you should have denied her entry." "Sir, with respect, I don't think that would have... I don't pay you to think. I pay you to follow orders." Maggie sat in the front row of the public gallery. The wood was hard beneath her. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers laced together to hide the tremor. The courtroom filled quickly behind her. Veterans packing the benches, standing against the walls when the seats ran out. The bailiff stopped trying to control the flow after about 60 people squeezed inside. Judge Morrison's face got redder with each new arrival. "This is highly irregular. This is not a public spectacle." "They have a right to observe," said a voice from the back. Morrison peered over his glasses. "Who said that?" A woman in a navy dress blue uniform stepped forward, silver oak leaves on her collar. Commander Patricia Hayes, JAG Corps. I'm here as an observer, Your Honor, ensuring proper legal procedure is followed in cases involving Medal of Honor recipients." "I didn't request JAG presence." "You don't have to, sir. The Navy sends a representative whenever one of our Medal of Honor recipients faces legal proceedings. Standard protocol." Morrison's lips pressed into a thin line. "Fine. Everyone sit down and be quiet. Bailiff, call the case." The bailiff cleared his throat. "Case number 47823, Commonwealth versus Margaret Sullivan, improper display of military decoration." "Mrs. Sullivan," Morrison said, his voice taking on that condescending tone men use when they think they're being patient, "please approach the bench." Maggie stood and walked forward. Her hip protested, but she kept her gait even. 30 years of hiding pain, of staying mission-ready no matter what her body screamed. "Mrs. Sullivan." "Master Chief Petty Officer Sullivan," she corrected quietly, his eyebrow raised. "Excuse me, that's my rank. If you're going to address me, please use it. I will address you however I see fit in my courtroom. With respect, Your Honor, I earned that rank over 30 years of service. I'd appreciate if you'd use it." Morrison's face flushed darker. "Fine. Master Chief Sullivan, you've been summoned here to provide documentation proving your right to wear that decoration. Do you have such documentation?" "I do." "Present it." Maggie reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were the papers she'd retrieved from the bank safety deposit box yesterday. Her DD-214, the official Medal of Honor citation, photographs from the ceremony, letters from the Secretary of the Navy, commendations from her commanding officers. She handed them to the bailiff, who brought them to the judge. Morrison took his time reviewing them. The courtroom waited in silence. Someone coughed. Someone else's phone buzzed and was quickly silenced. Finally, Morrison looked up. These appear to be in order. Relief rippled through the crowd behind Maggie. Tommy let out a breath he'd been holding. However, Morrison continued, I have some concerns. The relief evaporated. Concerns, Your Honor, Commander Hayes called from the back. Yes, the authenticity of these documents cannot be verified in this moment. For all I know, they could be forgeries. They're not forgeries, Maggie said. So you claim. But I've seen sophisticated fakes before. Identity theft is rampant. Someone could have stolen a real veteran's information and... Are you calling me a thief? Maggie's voice stayed level. I'm saying I need additional verification. These documents will be submitted to the Department of Defense for authentication. Until that process is complete, I'm ordering you to cease wearing that decoration in public. The courtroom erupted. Your Honor, that's outrageous. You can't order that. This is a violation of her rights. Morrison slammed his gavel. Order, I will have order, or I will clear this courtroom. The noise died down, but the anger remained thick enough to taste. Your Honor. Commander Hayes pushed through the crowd to the front. With respect, you cannot order a Medal of Honor recipient to remove their decoration. Federal Law, Title 36. Chapter 3. Specifically protects their right to wear it at any time in any place. Commander, I appreciate your input, but this is my courtroom, and I will make the legal determinations. Sir, you're making a significant error. Your objection is noted. He turned back to Maggie. Master Chief Sullivan. I'm also troubled by the circumstances that brought you here. Mr. Brennan's complaint stated that you were wearing this decoration at a casual veteran gathering, not at an official military event. That shows a pattern of inappropriate display. Inappropriate? Maggie felt something crack inside her chest. Your Honor, I wore that medal to a veteran meeting because it was appropriate. Because I was with people who understood what it meant. Because for 2 hours I could be around others who'd been where I'd been seen, what I'd seen carried what I carry. That doesn't justify... I wear this medal maybe 5 times a year, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Navy birthday, and sometimes at the Veterans Center when young kids come in broken and scared and I need to show them that survival is possible, that you can live through hell and come out the other side. Her voice cracked. You want to talk about appropriate. Let me tell you about appropriate. It's appropriate that Lance Corporal James Morrison got to walk his daughter down the aisle last year because I stopped him from bleeding out in Fallujah. It's appropriate that Corporal David Chen finished his engineering degree because I kept his leg attached long enough for the surgeons to save it. It's appropriate that PFC Maria Garcia got to meet her son because I pulled her out of a burning Humvee. She took a step closer to the bench. What's not appropriate is you sitting up there in your black robe acting like you have any right to judge me when you've never spent one day in uniform. Never held someone while they bled. Never had to choose which wounded Marine to treat first because you knew you couldn't save them all. Never lived with the ghosts of the ones you couldn't save. Master Chief Sullivan, control yourself. I am controlled, Your Honor. If I wasn't controlled, I'd be screaming. I'd be throwing things. I'd be showing you exactly what 20 years of combat stress looks like when it finally breaks free. But I learned a long time ago how to bury it. How to smile and nod and pretend I'm fine while the nightmares eat me alive. How to work at a hardware store and help customers find the right screws while my hands shake from memories of pulling shrapnel out of a 19-year-old's chest. The courtroom was silent. Morrison's face had gone from red to pale. So forgive me, Your Honor, if I don't think your concerns are valid. Forgive me if I think this whole proceeding is an insult. Not to me, I stopped caring about my own dignity a long time ago, but to every veteran in this room, every person who put on a uniform and said, I'll stand between my country and danger, every family who buried a son or daughter or spouse. You're telling all of them that their service, their sacrifice doesn't matter unless you personally approve it. I never said, you didn't have to say it. Your actions said it. The minute you decided I couldn't possibly be who I claimed to be, based on nothing but your own prejudice, you said it loud and clear. Morrison gripped his gavel. Master Chief Sullivan, I find you in contempt of court. More uproar. More gaveling. Commander Hayes was shouting something about legal procedure. Tommy and Frank were on their feet, held back by other veterans. "Bailiff," Morrison said, his voice shaking with rage. "Take Master Chief Sullivan into custody." The bailiff didn't move. "Bailiff, I gave you an order." The bailiff, whose name was Marcus Washington, looked at the judge. He was 43 years old, former Army 2 tours in Iraq. He had a daughter in college and a son in high school. He needed this job. His wife worked 2 shifts at the hospital just to keep them afloat. But he'd been standing there listening to Maggie speak, and he'd been watching Judge Morrison's face, and he knew in his bones that what was happening wasn't right. "Sir," Marcus said slowly, "I don't think I can do that." "You don't think you can follow a direct order?" "Sir, with respect, I think arresting her would be wrong." Morrison's face went purple. "You're fired, effective immediately. Get out of my courtroom." Marcus stood there for one more moment. Then he unclipped his badge, set it on the bailiff's desk, and walked toward the door. As he passed Maggie, he stopped. He came to attention. He saluted. She returned it, her hand shaking. He walked out. The courtroom door had barely closed when the rear doors burst open with such force they slammed against the walls. Admiral James Harrison strode in like a storm made flesh, 4 stars on his collar catching the fluorescent light. 65 years old, but moving like a man 20 years younger. His uniform was pristine, his bearing unmistakable. Command radiated from him like heat. Behind him came 6 others. 2 more admirals, 1 2-star, 1 3-star. A Navy captain. 2 Marine Corps lieutenant colonels. And bringing up the rear, a woman in a sharp business suit carrying a briefcase. Every veteran in the room who could stand came to attention. Those in wheelchairs sat straighter. It was involuntary, instinctive. When a 4-star walks in, your body responds before your brain catches up. Judge Morrison stood. "Who are you, and how dare you interrupt these proceedings?" Admiral Harrison didn't answer. His eyes swept the room, taking in the packed benches, the standing veterans, the tension thick enough to cut. Then his gaze landed on Maggie standing before the bench, the metal around her neck catching the light. He walked straight toward her. Didn't stop at the bar separating the gallery from the court. Didn't pause for permission. Just walked right up to her until they were 3 feet apart. Then he brought his heels together with a crack that echoed through the silent room. His hand came up in a salute so sharp, so perfect, it could have been carved from marble. An admiral, a 4-star flag officer, saluting an enlisted veteran. He held the salute for 5 seconds that felt like hours. Then he dropped his hand and his face split into a smile. "Master Chief Petty Officer Maggie Sullivan," he said, and his voice carried warmth and steel in equal measure. "It's been too long." "Admiral Harrison," Maggie's voice was thick with emotion she couldn't hide. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did." He turned to face the bench, his smile vanishing. "Now someone want to tell me why one of my Medal of Honor recipients is being held in contempt in a county courthouse?" Morrison had gone from purple to gray. "Admiral, this is highly irregular." "Irregular. I'll tell you what's irregular." "Judge Morrison, what's irregular is a Federal Medal of Honor recipient being accused of stolen valor by a city councilman who couldn't find Fallujah on a map with both hands and a GPS. What's irregular is that same recipient being dragged into court and told to prove her service by a judge who has never worn a uniform. What's irregular is watching your bailiff get fired for refusing to arrest a woman who ran into machine gun fire 6 times to save my Marines. Your Marines? That's right, my Marines. Because in October 2004, I was Lieutenant Commander Harrison assigned to 1st Marine Division headquarters. And Master Chief Sullivan's actions that day in Fallujah saved 4 of my Marines. I was in the COC when the casualty reports came in. I was on the helicopter that finally evacuated her after she refused to leave until every one of her wounded was safe. I was at Bethesda Naval Hospital when they dug the bullet out of her shoulder and told her she'd never have full range of motion again. He took a step toward the bench. I was in the Oval Office when the president placed that medal around her neck. I was at the reception afterward when she stood in the corner by herself because she didn't think she deserved to be there. I was the one who told her that she'd earned every bit of recognition she received and more. And I'm here now, 20 years later, to tell you the same thing I would have told you if you'd bothered to do 5 minutes of research before bringing her here. Admiral, I was simply verifying. You were exercising power you don't have over someone who's forgotten more about service and sacrifice than you'll ever know. Harrison's voice could have stripped paint. For the edification of this court and everyone in it, let me read you something. He nodded to the woman in the business suit. She opened her briefcase and handed him a document. This is the official Medal of Honor citation for Master Chief Hospital Corpsman Maggie Sullivan. I have it memorized, but I want to make sure every word is clear. He began to read, his voice filling the courtroom. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty, Hospital Corpsman First Class Margaret Sullivan distinguished herself while serving as a combat medic with 3rd Battalion 5th Marine Regiment during Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq on October 17, 2004. The courtroom was utterly silent. While on a routine patrol, Petty Officer Sullivan's unit was ambushed by a numerically superior enemy force employing machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and small arms fire. 3 Marines were immediately wounded and pinned down in an open intersection under heavy fire from multiple directions. His voice never wavered, without hesitation, and with complete disregard for her own safety. Petty Officer Sullivan left her covered position and ran through intense enemy fire to reach the first wounded Marine. While treating his injuries under fire, she used her own body to shield him from enemy rounds, sustaining shrapnel wounds to her right side. Despite her injuries, she successfully applied a tourniquet to the Marine's severed femoral artery, preventing him from bleeding out. Someone in the courtroom was crying quietly. She then dragged the wounded Marine to cover a distance of approximately 30 meters, while enemy rounds impacted the ground around her. Without pausing to treat her own wounds, she immediately ran back into the kill zone to reach the second wounded Marine. Harrison's eyes never left Judge Morrison's face. While treating the second Marine who had sustained severe chest trauma, enemy fire intensified. Petty Officer Sullivan drew her M9 sidearm and returned fire with one hand, while continuing to apply pressure to the Marine's sucking chest wound with the other. Her accurate fire suppressed an enemy machine gun position long enough for her unit to regroup and provide covering fire. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. She then ran back into the kill zone a 3rd time to reach the 3rd wounded Marine. While dragging him to safety, she was struck by enemy rifle fire, sustaining a gunshot wound through her right shoulder. Despite this wound, she refused evacuation and continued to treat all 3 Marines, stabilizing them for transport. Only after all 3 wounded were loaded onto evacuation helicopters did she consent to treatment for her own injuries, which included severe blood loss shrapnel wounds and a through-and-through gunshot wound that shattered her scapula. The Admiral's voice dropped lower. The citation concludes Petty Officer Sullivan's extraordinary heroism, selfless dedication to her fellow service members, and unwavering courage under the most extreme combat conditions reflect great credit upon herself and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Her actions directly resulted in the survival of 3 United States Marines who would have otherwise perished on the battlefield. He lowered the paper and looked directly at Morrison. That's not the full story, though. Want to know what the citation doesn't say? Morrison said nothing. It doesn't say that one of those Marines, Lance Corporal Morrison, no relation to you, thankfully had his leg so badly mangled that bone was sticking through the skin. It doesn't say that Master Chief Sullivan had to make the choice to apply the tourniquet so high that she knew he'd probably lose the leg because it was that, or watch him bleed out in 30 seconds. It doesn't say that she had to hold pressure on Corporal Chen's chest wound for 11 minutes until the medevac arrived, 11 minutes of her kneeling in his blood while enemy rounds snapped past her head. His voice got quieter, more dangerous. It doesn't say that PFC Garcia was on fire when Sullivan pulled her out of the Humvee. That Sullivan's hands were burned from putting out the flames with her bare hands. It doesn't say that after being shot and shredded and burned, she refused morphine because she needed to stay alert in case there were more casualties. That she sat in the helicopter holding IV bags for the Marines she'd saved, making sure they stayed stable during the flight to the field hospital. Admiral Harrison folded the paper carefully. And it definitely doesn't say that for the next 20 years Master Chief Sullivan barely slept. That she woke up screaming. That she watched her marriage strain under the weight of what she'd seen and done. That she attended the funerals of 2 Marines who didn't make it not from her platoon, but from other incidents, and blamed herself for not being there to save them too. That she retired quietly without fanfare, and spent the last decade working at a hardware store and volunteering at a veteran center because she still needs to help people, still needs to feel useful, still needs to justify to herself why she survived when so many didn't. He walked back to Maggie and stood beside her. So when you ordered her to remove that medal, Judge Morrison, you weren't just insulting her. You were insulting every Marine she saved, every service member who wears the uniform, every family who's buried a son or daughter and takes comfort in knowing that someone like Master Chief Sullivan was there trying to bring them home. Morrison opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The Rear Admiral, who'd entered with Harrison, spoke up. "I'm Rear Admiral Susan Chen. My son is the Corporal Chen that Master Chief Sullivan saved in Fallujah. He's now a civilian engineer with 2 children. They call her Grandma Maggie. Would you like to tell me to my face that she doesn't deserve that medal?" One of the Marine lieutenant colonels stepped forward. "Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. Yes, same name as the Lance Corporal. He's my younger brother. Lost his leg that day but gained a life. He's a high school teacher now, married, coaches wheelchair basketball. Master Chief Sullivan comes to every one of his games." The other lieutenant colonel spoke. "Lieutenant Colonel Garcia. Maria Garcia, the PFC who was pulled from that burning Humvee, was my niece. She died 3 years ago from complications from her injuries. But she lived long enough to get married, have a son, and see him start kindergarten. Master Chief Sullivan spoke at her funeral. Want to tell me that medal is unauthorized." Judge Morrison sat down heavily. His face had lost all color. Admiral Harrison turned back to him. "Your Honor, I'm going to make this very simple. You're going to dismiss all charges against Master Chief Sullivan. You're going to issue a formal written apology. You're going to reinstate Bailiff Washington. And you're going to explain to me why I shouldn't recommend a formal judicial review of your conduct. I didn't know. That's the problem. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You didn't verify. You saw a middle-aged woman in plain clothes and decided she couldn't possibly be who she claimed to be. You let your prejudices and assumptions override your duty to seek the truth." Commander Hayes stepped forward. "Admiral, I should inform you that Judge Morrison ordered Master Chief Sullivan to cease wearing the medal pending DOD verification of her documentation." Harrison's eyebrows shot up. "He ordered what?" "He ordered her to stop wearing the Medal of Honor." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Judge Morrison," Harrison said, his voice deadly quiet, "do you have any idea how close you just came to committing a federal crime? Attempting to prevent a Medal of Honor recipient from wearing their decoration is a violation of federal law. You're lucky I don't have military police escort you out of this building in handcuffs." "I apologize. I sincerely apologize. I was wrong." Morrison's hands shook on the bench. "All charges are dismissed. Master Chief Sullivan, I am deeply sorry for what I put you through." "Your Honor," the woman in the business suit spoke for the first time. "I'm Helen Crawford, attorney for Master Chief Sullivan. I'm filing a formal complaint with the State Judicial Review Board regarding your conduct in this case. I'm also notifying the DOJ about your attempt to confiscate a Medal of Honor and your order preventing its wear, both of which may constitute federal violations." "That's not necessary. That's not your decision." Crawford's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. "My client's rights were violated. Her honor was questioned. Her service was disrespected. There will be consequences." Morrison looked like he might be sick. Admiral Harrison turned to Maggie, his face softened. "Master Chief, how's that shoulder still giving you trouble?" "Some days worse than others, sir." Her voice was barely a whisper. "And the nightmares, still there. VA helping, when I let them." He smiled sadly. "Still trying to tough it out alone, I see. Some things never change." He put a hand on her shoulder, carefully mindful of the old wound. "Thank you for your service. Thank you for saving my Marines. Thank you for being the kind of person who runs toward danger instead of away from it. I just did my job, sir." "No, you did far more than your job. You did what heroes do." He stepped back and addressed the courtroom. "This proceeding is over. Master Chief Sullivan is free to go, and I better not hear about anyone anywhere questioning her service again. If I do, I will personally ensure they regret it. Clear." The courtroom erupted in applause, veterans cheering, some crying. Dorothy wheeled herself forward and grabbed Maggie's hand, sobbing. Tommy pushed through the crowd and wrapped his arms around her. Frank was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Maggie stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed, the metal heavy against her chest. Rachel pushed through the crowd. Maggie hadn't even seen her daughter arrive. Rachel's face was streaked with tears. "Mom," she said. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me?" "You never asked," Maggie said simply. "I should have. I should have known. I should have." Rachel broke down and Maggie pulled her close, both of them crying now, 20 years of distance collapsing in an instant. Admiral Harrison watched them with satisfaction, then turned to Judge Morrison, who sat slumped on his bench like a man who'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. "Your Honor," Harrison said, "I hope you learned something today. I hope you take this moment and become a better judge because of it. Because if I ever hear about you pulling something like this again, there won't be enough judicial immunity in the world to protect you." Morrison nodded mutely. Harrison and his entourage left the courtroom. The crowd slowly began to disperse. News crews waited outside, ready to pounce. But for now, in the quiet center of the chaos, Maggie held her daughter and felt for the first time in 20 years, like maybe she could breathe. The news vans multiplied like rabbits outside the courthouse. By noon, there were 7 of them, satellite dishes pointed at the sky like flowers seeking sun. Maggie sat in Admiral Harrison's staff car parked in the courthouse garage where reporters couldn't reach her and watched Rachel pace back and forth on the phone. "Yes, that's my mother. No, she won't be giving interviews, because she doesn't want to, that's why." Rachel's voice had an edge Maggie had never heard before. Protective, almost fierce. "If you call this number again, I'll report you for harassment." She hung up and immediately the phone rang again. Different number. "Don't answer it," Maggie said. "Mom, they won't stop." "Then turn the phone off." Rachel stared at the screen, watching it ring. There are 63 missed calls, 47 text messages, news networks, local papers, some podcast called Military Heroes Unmasked. They all want your story. They can't have it. "Mom," I said no. Maggie's voice was firm. "This isn't about me. It was never about me." Admiral Harrison sat in the front passenger seat, turned sideways so he could see them both. His driver, a young petty officer named Rodriguez, pretended to be invisible. "Master Chief," Harrison said gently, "I understand your reluctance, but this story is out there. The video from Monday's confrontation at the VFW has been viewed 4 million times. The courthouse steps this morning had a dozen cameras. You can't put this back in the bottle. I can try. You can. But you might be missing an opportunity." "What opportunity?" "To be famous, I don't want that. To educate people." Harrison leaned back. "Judge Morrison learned something today. So did everyone in that courtroom. So did everyone who's going to see the news coverage tonight. They're going to learn that heroes don't always look like what we expect. That service and sacrifice come in forms we might overlook." "That's not my job." "Isn't it?" He held her gaze. "You spent 30 years saving lives. You spent the last 10 helping veterans. When did you decide that teaching civilians was beneath you?" The words stung because they were true. Maggie looked away out the window at the concrete pillars of the parking garage. "I'm tired," she said quietly. "I'm 55 years old and I'm tired. I did my time. I paid my dues. Can't I just be left alone?" "Of course you can. No one's going to force you to do anything." Harrison's voice softened. "But Maggie, you've been hiding for a decade. Working at that hardware store, keeping your head down, pretending you're nobody special. How's that working out for you?" "I'm fine." "Are you?" Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's been running for a long time. And maybe, just maybe, this is the universe telling you to stop running. Rachel slid into the back seat next to her mother. Mom, can I say something? Do I have a choice? Not really. Rachel took Maggie's hand. Her fingers were warm, familiar in a way that hurt. I didn't know. All those years growing up watching you be so distant, so closed off, I thought you just didn't love me enough. Didn't care enough. I thought the Navy mattered more than I did. Rachel. Let me finish. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Sitting in that courtroom, hearing what you did, hearing how you saved those people. Her voice broke. You weren't distant because you didn't care. You were distant because you cared too much. Because you'd seen too much. Because you were carrying weight I couldn't even imagine. Maggie felt tears building but fought them back. She'd cried enough for one day. I'm sorry I wasn't a better mother. No, don't apologize. I'm the one who should apologize. I'm 32 years old, and I'm just now understanding who you are. That's on me. Rachel squeezed her hand. But I want to understand now. I want to know you, the real you, not the version you've been pretending to be. I don't know if I remember who the real me is. Then let's figure it out together. Admiral Harrison's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Master Chief, we have a problem. Another one. Richard Brennan just held a press conference. He's claiming you threatened him at the VFW, that you have a history of violent behavior, that the Navy gave you the medal to cover up misconduct. Maggie's stomach dropped. He's lying. I know he is, but he's saying it on camera and people are listening. Harrison turned his phone to show her. The video was already playing on the local news website. Brennan stood behind a podium looking earnest and wronged. This woman has been masquerading as a hero for years, Brennan was saying, but I've done my research. There are inconsistencies in her story, questions about her service record. I'm calling for a full investigation. He can't do that, Rachel said. He can't just lie. He can say whatever he wants, First Amendment. Harrison's jaw was tight. The question is what we do about it. Sue him, Rachel said immediately. That takes time and money, and it keeps the story alive for months. Harrison looked at Maggie. Or you could set the record straight yourself. One interview, one chance to tell your side, to show people who you really are. I'm not doing interviews. Not even to protect your reputation, to stop this man from destroying what you've spent 30 years building. What have I built? I work at a hardware store. My reputation is already at rock bottom. That's not true, and you know it. Every veteran in the city knows who you are, knows what you've done for them. But now Brennan is going to poison that. He's going to make you look like a fraud, a liar, maybe even dangerous. Is that what you want? Maggie didn't answer. She was watching the video of Brennan, watching his smug face, his calculated concern. He'd been humiliated in front of the Admiral, embarrassed in court, and now he was lashing out the only way he knew how. He's scared, she said finally. What? Brennan, he's scared. He made a mistake, and instead of owning it, he's doubling down, trying to make me the villain so he doesn't have to be. That's probably accurate, but it doesn't change the problem. Maggie's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, another ancient flip phone that Rachel had been begging her to replace for years. The number was unfamiliar but local. She answered. Hello. Is this Master Chief Sullivan? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. My name is Jennifer Holbrook. I'm a producer at 60 Minutes. We'd like to do a feature on your story. Maggie hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. Master Chief Sullivan, I'm calling from Good Morning America. She hung up again. Mom, maybe you should... No. Maggie turned the phone off and shoved it in her pocket. I'm not doing this. I'm not becoming some media circus attraction. Then what are you going to do? Rachel's voice was gentle but insistent. Let Brennan control the narrative. Let him tell everyone you're a fraud. Let him say what he wants. The people who matter know the truth. Do they? Because I didn't know the truth. I'm your daughter and I didn't know. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. How many other people are out there right now reading Brennan's lies, believing them? How many veterans are going to hear his words and think you betrayed them? That hit harder than Maggie expected. The thought of Tommy or Frank or Dorothy hearing Brennan's accusations and wondering even for a second if they might be true. One interview, Harrison said quietly. Local news, 30 minutes. You tell your story in your own words. Show them the woman I know. The woman those Marines knew. The woman who saved lives while her own life was bleeding out. I can't. Why not? Because, Maggie's voice cracked. Because if I tell that story, if I really tell it, I have to go back there. I have to remember every detail, every sound, every smell, every face. And I've spent 20 years trying to forget. The car was silent. Then Rachel spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe that's the problem, Mom. Maybe you're not supposed to forget. Maybe you're supposed to remember and live with it. And maybe sharing it is the only way to make it bearable. Maggie closed her eyes. The inside of her eyelids was a movie screen showing Fallujah on eternal repeat. Dust and blood, screaming and helicopter rotors. The weight of a dying Marine in her arms. If I do this, she said slowly, I do it my way. No studio, no makeup, no scripted questions. Just me talking to someone who actually listens. Harrison nodded. I know someone. Lisa Chen. She's a local reporter, but she's also a Marine Corps veteran. She gets it. When Shiva, tonight, at the Veteran Center. Your territory, your terms. Maggie opened her eyes and looked at Rachel. Will you be there? Mom, I'm not leaving your side. Even when you hear things that are going to be hard to hear, especially then. Maggie turned to Harrison. Set it up. The Veteran Center at 6 p.m. was packed. Word had spread through the military community faster than wildfire. Marines in dress blues stood alongside Army vets in casual clothes. Navy chiefs mixed with Air Force retirees. Wheelchairs lined the walls. Service dogs lay at their handlers' feet. Lisa Chen arrived with a single cameraman and a microphone. She was 40, compact and strong, with the bearing of someone who'd earned respect the hard way. She shook Maggie's hand and held it. Master Chief, thank you for doing this. Don't thank me yet. You might regret it. I doubt that. Lisa gestured to 2 chairs set up in the center of the room. Whenever you're ready. Maggie sat. The chair was uncomfortable metal, folding the kind they use for AA meetings and grief support groups. Fitting, she thought. This was going to be both. Rachel sat in the front row, flanked by Tommy and Frank. Dorothy had positioned her wheelchair right next to Rachel. Admiral Harrison stood in the back, arms crossed, a silent guardian. Lisa settled into her chair and nodded to the cameraman. The red light came on. Master Chief Maggie Sullivan served 30 years in the United States Navy as a hospital corpsman. In 2004, she earned the Medal of Honor for actions in Fallujah, Iraq. This is her story in her own words. Lisa turned to Maggie. Master Chief, let's start with the basics. Tell us about that day. Maggie's hands gripped the sides of the chair. October 17th, 2004. We were on a routine patrol. 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. I was the platoon corpsman. We'd been in Fallujah for 6 weeks. It was hot, dusty, tense. You could feel the city waiting to explode. What happened? The convoy turned onto Route Fran. That's what we called the main road through our sector. We were 3 vehicles back from the lead Humvee when the RPG hit. Maggie's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white. The blast wave, you don't just hear it, you feel it in your chest, your bones. My ears were ringing so loud I couldn't hear the radio chatter at first. Where were you? In the 3rd vehicle. I grabbed my aid bag and jumped out. That's when I heard Sergeant Morrison screaming for a corpsman. I looked up and saw 3 Marines down in the intersection, just lying there, exposed. And the machine gun fire was... She paused, breathing carefully. It was coming from everywhere. Multiple positions, maybe 4 or 5 enemy fighters. They had us pinned. Lisa leaned forward. What went through your mind? Nothing. I didn't think. You can't think in moments like that. You just move. Maggie's eyes were unfocused, seeing something 20 years in the past. I told myself I was just going to check on them. Just assess the injuries. But when I got to the first Marine Lance Corporal Morrison, his leg was torn open, femoral artery severed. He was bleeding out right there in front of me. How old was he? 20. Just 20 years old. He kept saying, "Doc, Doc, am I gonna die?" And I told him no. I told him I had him. I applied the tourniquet as high as I could right up near his hip. I knew he'd probably lose the leg, but he'd be alive. That's the trade. Someone in the crowd sniffled. Maggie didn't look up. I got him stable and dragged him behind a wall. Maybe 30 meters, felt like 3 miles. He weighed 200 pounds with his gear. I weighed 130, but you find strength when you need it. That's when you were wounded the first time. Yeah, shrapnel from a grenade. Hit me in the right side under my ribs. Felt like someone stuck a hot poker in my gut. But the second Marine Corporal Chen was still out there. Chest wound. Sucking chest wound. Every breath he took was pulling air into his chest cavity. If I didn't seal it, his lung would collapse. Did you treat your own wound first? No. No time. I ran back out. Maggie's hands were shaking now. Rachel leaned forward in her chair, tears streaming down her face. I got to Chen and the machine gun fire was so close I could hear the rounds snapping past my ears. That sound, it's like someone cracking a whip right next to your head. I knew if I stayed there I was going to die. But if I left, he was going to die. So what did you do? I pulled out my M9, my sidearm, and I started shooting back with one hand while I sealed his chest wound with the other. I don't know if I hit anything. Probably not. But it made them duck, made them slow down their fire rate, gave my guys time to reposition and return fire. You engaged the enemy while treating a casualty. I did what I had to do. Maggie's voice was flat. Got Chen stabilized and dragged him to cover. That's when I saw the 3rd Marine, PFC Garcia. She was... Maggie's voice caught. She was on fire. The Humvee had taken an RPG hit and she'd been thrown clear, but her uniform was burning. The room was absolutely silent except for quiet crying. I ran to her, put out the flames with my bare hands. My palms blistered instantly, but I didn't feel it. Just knew I had to get the fire out. Maggie held up her hands. Even 20 years later, the scars were visible. That's when I took the rifle round, through my right shoulder. Felt like someone hit me with a sledgehammer. My arm went numb, but Garcia was alive barely, and I had to get her out. You dragged her to safety with a gunshot wound. I didn't have a choice. She was 19 years old. 19. She had a boyfriend back home, a mom who called her every Sunday. I'd seen pictures of them. I wasn't going to let her die in that street. Lisa was wiping her own eyes now. Master Chief, after you got all 3 Marines to safety, what happened? The medevac helicopter came in. They loaded Morrison, Chen, and Garcia. The crew chief tried to load me too, but I refused. There could have been more casualties. I needed to stay with my platoon. You refused medical evacuation while wounded. I was still functional. I could still help. That's all that mattered. When did you finally get treated? 2 hours later. After we'd cleared the area and secured the wounded, after I'd checked every single Marine in the platoon to make sure no one else was hurt, only then did I let them put me on a helicopter. And your injuries. Shrapnel wounds required surgery to remove the fragments. The gunshot wound shattered my scapula. That's the shoulder blade. I had 3 surgeries to reconstruct it. I still can't lift my right arm above my shoulder, still have limited rotation. She demonstrated lifting her arm partway and stopping with a grimace. Some days the pain is manageable. Some days it's not. Do you have regrets? Maggie looked directly at the camera for the first time. Every day. I regret that I wasn't fast enough to save 2 Marines from a different incident 3 weeks later. I regret that I couldn't do more. I regret that good people died while I lived. But you saved 3 lives that day. 3 out of how many that died in Fallujah? 3 out of thousands. It doesn't feel like enough. It never feels like enough. Is that why you've been so private about your Medal of Honor? I didn't earn that medal. The Marines I saved earned it. I just happened to be there. Maggie's voice was fierce. People see this decoration and they think hero. They think brave. But I wasn't brave. I was terrified. Every step toward those wounded Marines, I was sure I was going to die. I did it anyway because that's the job. That's what coursemen do. We run toward danger because someone has to. What do you want people to understand about your service? Maggie was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was raw with emotion she could no longer hide. I want them to understand that heroes are ordinary people who do extraordinary things when they have no other choice. I want them to understand that service isn't glamorous. It's messy and bloody, and it breaks you in ways you never recover from. I want them to understand that the person serving your coffee or ringing up your groceries might have saved lives, might have done incredible things, might carry wounds you'll never see. She paused. And I want them to understand that judging someone based on how they look, based on your assumptions about what they should be, that's not just wrong. It's dangerous. Because you might be disrespecting someone who gave everything for you, someone who still bears the scars, someone who deserves better than your ignorance. The camera kept rolling. Lisa let the silence hold. Master Chief, she finally said, what do you say to City Councilman Brennan, who's claiming you threatened him, and that your story doesn't add up? Maggie's expression hardened. I say he's a coward. He made a mistake, and instead of owning it like a man, he's trying to destroy my reputation to save his own. He's lying about me because the truth makes him look like what he is. Someone who judges without thinking, attacks without evidence, and hides behind his position instead of having the courage to admit he was wrong. That's strong language. It's accurate language. And I'm done being polite. I'm done letting people like him diminish the service of veterans. I'm done staying quiet while he spreads lies. What do you want from him? Nothing. I don't want his apology. I don't want his money. I want him to look at himself in the mirror and realize that his actions have consequences, that his words matter, that attacking a veteran's honor isn't politics, it's personal, and it's wrong. The camera finally stopped. Lisa stood and embraced Maggie. Thank you. That was incredibly powerful. Maggie felt hollow, scraped raw from the inside out. Rachel was at her side, immediately wrapping her in a hug. Tommy and Frank and a dozen others surrounded them, a wall of support and protection. Admiral Harrison pushed through the crowd. Master Chief, that was exactly what needed to be said. It doesn't change anything. It changes everything. The truth is out there now, in your words, your way. The interview aired that night at 10 p.m. By 11, it had been uploaded to YouTube. By midnight, it had 3 million views. By morning, it had 15 million. Maggie slept through all of it, exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical fatigue. She slept for 12 hours straight, the first real sleep she'd had in 20 years. No nightmares, no waking up screaming, just deep, heavy sleep that felt like drowning and resurrection in equal measure. She woke to find Rachel asleep in the chair next to her bed, Scout's head resting on Rachel's lap. The dog looked up when Maggie stirred, thumped his tail once, then settled back down. Maggie reached out and touched Rachel's hair. Her daughter. Her baby girl who wasn't a baby anymore, who had come back to her after 3 years of silence. Rachel's eyes opened. Mom, I'm here. You were sleeping so deeply I got scared. Kept checking to make sure you were breathing. I'm okay. Better than okay. Maggie sat up slowly, her shoulder protesting, but manageable. What time is it? 9 a.m. Thursday. You've been asleep for 14 hours. 14, why didn't you wake me? Because you needed it. Rachel pulled out her phone. Mom, you need to see this. I don't want to see news coverage. It's not news coverage. Well, it is, but just look. Rachel handed her the phone. The screen showed a video Lisa Chen's interview, but it wasn't the news website. It was Twitter. And underneath the video were hundreds, thousands of comments. I'm a Marine Corps vet, and this made me cry. Master Chief Sullivan is the real deal. My grandfather was Navy. He would have been proud to serve with her. I judged a homeless vet last week because he looked rough. After watching this, I'm ashamed. You never know who someone is. Brennan is finished. No one's going to trust a word he says after lying about this woman. Rachel scrolled down. More comments. More support. More people sharing their own stories of service, of hidden heroes, of lessons learned. There's more, Rachel said. She pulled up a news article. Brennan resigned this morning, effective immediately, issued a statement saying he was stepping down to seek treatment for stress. Treatment for stress? Maggie laughed a bitter sound. He means treatment for getting caught. The city council issued a formal apology to you. The mayor wants to meet with you. The VA hospital wants to name their new psychiatric wing after you. No. Mom. I said no. No wings, no ceremonies, no awards. Maggie handed back the phone. I did one interview, that's all they get. But people want to honor you. Then they can honor me by doing better, by seeing veterans, by respecting service, by not jumping to conclusions about people based on how they look. Maggie stood her legs unsteady. I need coffee. In the kitchen, she found that Rachel had stocked her fridge. Real food. Eggs and milk and fresh vegetables. The kind of things Maggie usually skipped because cooking for one felt pointless. You went shopping. While you slept, your fridge was empty except for ketchup and a questionable carton of Chinese food. That Chinese food was only 3 weeks old. Mom, that's disgusting. They smiled at each other, a moment of normalcy in the chaos. The doorbell rang. Scout barked once, his alert bark, not his aggressive one. Maggie looked through the window and saw Marcus Washington standing on her porch, the bailiff who'd been fired for refusing to arrest her. She opened the door. Marcus. Master Chief. He looked uncomfortable. I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to check on you, and to thank you. Thank me for what? For being worth losing my job over. You shouldn't have lost your job. Judge Morrison reinstated me yesterday. Full back pay. Formal apology. Said he'd acted rashly and I'd actually been following proper procedure. Marcus smiled. Your Admiral Harrison called him. Suggested that firing me might not have been his wisest decision. The Admiral has a way with suggestions. He does. Marcus shifted his weight. Master Chief, I served 8 years in the Army. 2 tours in Iraq. When I got out, I thought I was done with military life. Thought I'd left all that behind. But standing in that courtroom watching what they were doing to you, I realized I'd never really left. That there are some things you don't stop being, some codes you don't stop following. Thank you for that, for standing up. Thank you for showing me what standing up actually looks like. He held out his hand. It was an honor to serve with you, even briefly. She shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. He hugged back hard, the way veterans hug each other when words aren't enough. After he left, Maggie sat on her porch with coffee and watched the neighborhood wake up. Normal people, doing normal things. Walking dogs, getting newspapers, heading to work. She'd spent 10 years trying to be one of them. Trying to be invisible, ordinary, safe. But maybe Rachel was right. Maybe Harrison was right. Maybe she'd been running when she should have been standing still. Her phone, charged overnight by Rachel, buzzed with a new voicemail. She almost ignored it, then saw it was from Judge Morrison. Against her better judgment, she listened. Master Chief Sullivan. His voice was quiet, humbled. I don't expect you to return this call. I don't deserve your time or attention. But I wanted you to know I watched your interview 3 times last night. And I've made a decision. I'm retiring from the bench. Not because I'm being forced to, but because I don't trust my own judgment anymore. If I could make such a catastrophic error about you, what other errors have I made? What other injustices have I committed from a place of ignorance? He paused. I'm also establishing a foundation, a scholarship fund for Children of Medal of Honor recipients. I know that doesn't fix what I did. Nothing can fix that. But maybe it can honor people like you, people I failed to see. Another pause. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. You deserved better. Those Marines deserved better. Our country deserved better. I failed you all. The voicemail ended. Maggie sat with the phone in her hand, feeling something she hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a deep, bone-tired sense that maybe finally something had changed. Not just for her, for everyone. Rachel came outside with her own coffee. What are you thinking about? That maybe hiding was the wrong choice. And now I'm thinking it's time to stop hiding. Maggie looked at her daughter. I'm thinking it's time to actually live. What does that mean? I don't know yet. But I'm going to figure it out, and I'd like you to be there while I do. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I'm not going anywhere, Mom. Never again. They sat together in the morning sun, drinking coffee, saying nothing, saying everything. And for the first time in 20 years, Maggie felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. The peace lasted 3 days. On Sunday afternoon, Maggie was at the hardware store doing inventory when her manager Dan knocked on the stockroom door. He looked nervous, which was unusual. Dan was ex-Air Force, steady as concrete, nothing rattled him. Maggie, there's someone here to see you. Tell them I'm working. It's Lance Corporal Morrison. The clipboard slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. 20 years. She hadn't seen him in 20 years. The last time had been at Bethesda Naval Hospital, him in one bed recovering from his amputation, her in another, getting the bullet removed from her shoulder. He's here, in the parking lot. Says he'll wait as long as it takes. Maggie's hands started shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. Tell him 5 minutes. She went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face, looked at herself in the mirror. She could see the young corpsman she'd been overlaid on the woman she'd become. 2 versions of the same person separated by 20 years and an ocean of blood. Outside, he was standing next to a Toyota sedan leaning on a cane. He was 40 now, still broad-shouldered, but softer around the middle the way men get when they stop running every day. His right leg ended mid-thigh, the prosthetic visible below his shorts. When he saw her, his face crumpled. "Doc," he said, and his voice broke on the word. She walked to him, and they held each other, both crying, neither caring who saw. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry about your leg. Doc, you saved my life. You gave me 20 more years I wasn't supposed to have. Don't apologize for that. I should have been faster. Should have gotten to you sooner. Stop." He pulled back, holding her shoulders. "I have a wife. I have a daughter. I teach history at the high school, and I coach wheelchair basketball, and I have a life. Because of you. Only because of you." "James, no, listen to me. I saw the interview. I saw what you said about carrying regrets, about feeling like you didn't do enough. And I got in my car and drove 6 hours because you need to hear this." His eyes were fierce. "You did everything. You did more than everything. And if I have to spend the rest of my life telling you that, I will." A car pulled up next to them. A woman got out, mid-30s, Asian features moving with careful precision. She had scars on her arms, visible even from a distance. "Doc," she said, and Maggie's breath caught. "Maria Garcia. They told me you were dead. They told me you died in that street." "I almost did." Maria walked closer. "But you didn't let me. You pulled me out of the fire. You saved my hands." She held them up, showing the burn scars. "These hands held my son. These hands held my husband on our wedding day. These hands worked, created, lived, because you wouldn't give up." Another car arrived, then another. David Chen got out, now 42, wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase. Behind him came 3 people Maggie didn't recognize, a woman with 2 teenagers, all looking nervous. "Master Chief Sullivan," the woman said. "You don't know me. I'm Jennifer Morrison, James Morrison's sister. This is his daughter Sarah and his son Michael." Maggie looked at James Morrison, who was crying openly now. "You have kids." "2, got married 8 years ago. The prosthetic doesn't slow me down much." He wiped his eyes. "Sarah's going to state on a track scholarship. Michael wants to be a Marine." "No," Maggie said automatically. "Talk him out of it." "Can't. He's stubborn, like someone I know." James smiled through tears. "He says he wants to be like his old man, like the uncle he never met who died in Helmand, like the corpsman who saved his dad's life." The hardware store parking lot was filling up with people, veterans from the center, Dorothy in her wheelchair, Tommy and Frank, and now the Marines she'd saved, their families, their children, who existed because she'd refused to let them die. Dan came outside with his phone. "Maggie, the news crews are on their way. Someone posted this on social media." Of course they did. She looked at the crowd gathering, felt overwhelmed and grateful and terrified all at once. I can't do this. I can't be what they want me to be." "You don't have to be anything except yourself," James said. "That's all we're asking." Rachel's car screeched into the parking lot. She jumped out, ran to her mother. "Mom, are you okay? Someone tweeted that veterans were surrounding you at work, and I thought, I'm fine, better than fine." Maggie introduced her to James, to Maria, to David. "Rachel, these are the Marines I saved. These are the people who made that day worth surviving." Rachel stared at them, understanding flooding her face. These weren't abstract names in a citation. They were real people, alive and whole, standing in a hardware store parking lot because her mother had bled for them. "Thank you," Rachel said to them. "Thank you for being alive, for giving me the chance to understand why my mom is the way she is." The news vans arrived, but the veterans formed a barrier, keeping the cameras at a distance. This moment wasn't for public consumption. This was family. David Chen stepped forward. "Master Chief, my mother asked me to give you something." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a handwritten letter. She wrote it 10 years ago, right after she retired from the Navy. She's the Rear Admiral who came to the courthouse. "Admiral Susan Chen is your mother." "Yes, she wanted you to have this. She said you'd understand when the time was right." Maggie opened the letter with shaking hands. The handwriting was neat, controlled, military precise. "Master Chief Sullivan, my son David speaks of you the way religious people speak of saints. He credits you with his life, but I credit you with more than that. You gave me back my son. You gave me grandchildren I would never have met. You gave me the privilege of watching him grow into a man who makes me proud every single day. I know you struggle with the weight of what you've done. David told me how you visited him in the hospital, how you apologized for not being faster, for not doing more. Let me tell you something as both a mother and an officer. You did enough. You did more than enough. You did everything. Stop punishing yourself for surviving. Stop carrying guilt for the lives you couldn't save. Start celebrating the lives you did save, including your own. My son is alive. That's not a small thing. That's everything. With deepest gratitude and respect, RIDM Susan Chen." Maggie folded the letter carefully, her vision blurred with tears. She looked at David, at this successful man who'd been a broken 19-year-old with a sucking chest wound, and felt something shift inside her chest. "Your mother is a wise woman. She learned from the best." David smiled. "She told me about the first time she met you, at Bethesda. You were recovering from shoulder surgery and she came to your room to thank you. You told her not to thank you because you were just doing your job." "I remember. She told me her job was being a mother and I'd given her back her son, so she'd be thanking me for the rest of her life. She meant it. She's been tracking your career, your life. When she heard what happened at the courthouse, she mobilized Admiral Harrison and half the Navy brass. She would have come herself, but she's recovering from knee surgery. Tell her I'm grateful. Tell her yourself." David pulled out his phone and dialed. "Mom, I'm with Master Chief Sullivan. She's right here." He handed the phone to Maggie. She took it, feeling like she was holding something precious and fragile. "Admiral Chen." "Maggie." The voice on the other end was warm, maternal. "I watched your interview 6 times. I cried every time." "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Those were good tears, proud tears. You finally told the truth about what happened, about what it cost you. It didn't cost me nearly what it cost others. Stop that. Right now. Stop diminishing your own sacrifice." Admiral Chen's voice turned firm. "You took a bullet for my son. You bled for him. You carry scars for him. That's not nothing. That's everything a mother could ask for. Admiral." "Susan, call me Susan. And listen to me, Maggie. I'm 70 years old. I've served this country for 47 years. I've seen heroes and cowards and everything in between. You're the genuine article, the real thing. And it's time you started believing it. I don't know how. Then learn. Starting today. Starting right now. Look around you. See the people whose lives you touched. Let them love you. Let them thank you. Let yourself feel worthy of what you did." Maggie looked at the faces surrounding her. James with his prosthetic leg and his proud smile. Maria with her scarred hands that held her children. David with his mother on the phone, telling him how much she loved him. Rachel standing close, protective, finally understanding. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll try." "Good. Now put my son back on. And Maggie, call me sometime. We're having Thanksgiving at my house and you're invited. Bring your daughter. Bring your whole family." "I don't have much family." "You have us. We're your family now." The call ended. Maggie handed the phone back to David, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of the invitation. Tommy pushed through the crowd. "Doc, we have a problem." "Of course we do. Richard Brennan is at the Veterans Center. He's demanding to see you. Says he needs to apologize in person." The mood shifted instantly. James's face hardened. Maria's jaw clenched. The protective barrier of veterans tightened. "He's got nerve," Frank said. "After what he did." "Let me handle this," Maggie said. "Doc, you don't owe him anything." "I know, but he owes me, and I want to hear what he has to say." Rachel grabbed her arm. "Mom, please don't. He doesn't deserve your time." "Probably not, but I need to look him in the eye. I need to know if his apology is real, or if it's just more political maneuvering." "Then I'm coming with you." "So am I," James said. "And me," Maria added. David nodded. "All of us." They drove in a convoy to the Veterans Center, a dozen cars following Maggie's old truck. When they arrived, Brennan was standing outside with his wife and 2 teenage children. He looked smaller, somehow diminished. His wife had been crying. His kids looked scared. Maggie got out of her truck slowly, her Marines flanking her like an honor guard. "Master Chief Sullivan," Brennan said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for seeing me." "Say what you came to say." "I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. I judged you based on nothing but my own arrogance and ignorance. I called you a fraud when you're the furthest thing from it. I tried to destroy your reputation to save my own. There's no excuse for that. No justification." He gestured to his family. "My wife Diane insisted I come here. She watched your interview, and she was horrified by what I'd done. My daughter Emma told me I was a bully and a coward. My son Daniel said he was ashamed of me." His voice broke. "They're right. All of them. I'm ashamed of myself." Maggie said nothing, just watched him. "I resigned from the city council. I've withdrawn from public life. But that's not enough. Nothing I do will ever be enough to make up for what I did to you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is a check. Every dollar I have in savings. $50,000. I want you to donate it to the Veterans Center or burn it. Whatever you think is right. I don't want your money. Please, I need to do something. I need to make this right somehow." "You can't make it right, Mr. Brennan. There's no amount of money that undoes what you did." "I know. But please, let me try." Maggie looked at the envelope, then at his family. His wife met her eyes, pleading silently. His daughter was crying. His son looked like he wanted to disappear. "Your family shouldn't have to pay for your mistakes," Maggie said. "They already are. They're the ones who have to live with knowing their husband and father is a man who attacks veterans." "Are you—" Maggie stepped closer. "Are you a man who attacks veterans? Or are you a man who made a terrible mistake and is trying to learn from it?" "I don't know anymore." "Then figure it out." "Because, Mr. Brennan, I don't care about your apology. I don't care about your money. I care about whether you're actually going to change or whether you're just sorry you got caught." He flinched like she'd slapped him. "You want to make amends, really make amends, then go volunteer at a VA hospital. Sit with dying veterans and hold their hands. Listen to their stories. Learn what service actually means. Spend a year doing that and then come back and tell me if you still think you understand what you did to me." "I will. I swear I will." "Good. And take your family with you. Let your kids see what real sacrifice looks like. Let them understand that heroism isn't glamorous. It's painful and messy, and it breaks people. Maybe then they'll grow up to be better than you were." His wife gasped softly, but Brennan just nodded. You're right. About all of it. I usually am. Maggie took the envelope. I'll give this to the Veterans Center, but not as your donation, as an anonymous donation, because you don't get to buy forgiveness. You don't get to feel better because you wrote a check. Thank you. Don't thank me. Earn it. Spend the rest of your life earning it. She turned and walked away, her Marines following. Behind them, Brennan stood with his family, looking like a man who'd finally understood the weight of his own actions. Inside the Veterans Center, Maggie found Admiral Harrison waiting with Commander Hayes and Marcus Washington. The bailiff looked uncomfortable in civilian clothes, like he wasn't sure if he belonged. Master Chief, Harrison said, we need to discuss something important. Can it wait? I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm afraid not. The Secretary of the Navy wants to meet with you tomorrow in Washington. Why? Because your interview has sparked a national conversation. Congress is proposing new legislation to protect Medal of Honor recipients from harassment. The VA is implementing new training programs, and the Secretary wants you to be the face of it. No. Maggie. I said no. I did one interview. That's all I signed up for. This is bigger than one interview. This is a chance to create real change, to make sure what happened to you never happens to another veteran. Then find someone else to be the face of it. Find someone who wants the spotlight. They don't want someone who wants it. They want someone who's earned it. Someone who can speak with authority and authenticity. That's you. Maggie sat down heavily in a folding chair. Rachel sat beside her, taking her hand. Mom, Rachel said softly, I know you're tired. I know this is hard, but the Admiral's right. You have a voice now. You can use it to help people. I've been helping people for 30 years. Quietly, in the shadows, one person at a time. Rachel squeezed her hand. But what if you could help thousands, millions? What if your story could change how this country treats its veterans? That's too much pressure. You've handled worse. James Morrison had come inside along with Maria and David. Doc, you ran into machine gun fire for us. Meeting with the Secretary of the Navy should be easy. It's not the same. You're right, it's not. There's no one shooting at you this time. There's just an opportunity to do more good, reach more people, save more lives. James crouched down in front of her chair. You saved my life in Fallujah. Let us help you save lives now. Let us support you the way you supported us. Maggie looked at the faces around her, her Marines, her daughter, her fellow veterans, all of them ready to stand with her to carry the weight together. If I do this, she said slowly, I'm not doing it alone. You won't be, Harrison promised. I'll be with you. Commander Hayes will be with you. Every veteran in this room will be with you. And me, Rachel said. I'm not letting you do this alone, Mom. Maggie closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. It felt familiar, that weight. Like the weight of an aid bag full of medical supplies. Like the weight of responsibility for lives that weren't her own. Okay, she said. I'll meet with the Secretary, but I'm not promising anything beyond that. Fair enough. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She sat on her back porch with Scout at her feet and watched the stars. The same stars that had been overhead in Fallujah, though she couldn't see them then, through the dust and smoke. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Master Chief Sullivan. This is Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Kim, Marine Corps, Base Quantico. I'm sorry to call so late, but there's a situation. Maggie's heart rate spiked. What kind of situation? We have a young Marine here, Private First Class Jessica Turner. She's 19 years old and she's in crisis. She tried to hurt herself tonight. The base chaplain is with her, but she's asking for you. She saw your interview and she says you're the only one who'll understand. Understand what? She was in Fallujah last year. Her convoy was ambushed. 3 of her friends died. She can't stop seeing their faces. Maggie's breath caught. 20 years later and it was still happening. Young kids sent to the same streets facing the same horror, carrying the same wounds. I'll be there in 2 hours. Master Chief, it's almost midnight. I said I'll be there. She hung up and found Rachel standing in the doorway wearing one of Maggie's old Navy sweatshirts. "I heard," Rachel said. "I'm driving. You should sleep." "Mom, I'm not letting you do this alone." They made the drive to Quantico in silence, Rachel handling the old truck like she'd been driving it for years. The base was quiet, most buildings dark. The chaplain met them at the entrance to the base hospital. "Master Chief Sullivan. Thank God you came. Private Turner is in the psychiatric ward. She's stable, but she's fragile. Keeps saying she doesn't deserve to be alive." Maggie knew that feeling intimately, had lived with it for 20 years. "Take me to her." The private was small, maybe 100 pounds, with short dark hair and eyes that had seen too much too soon. She was sitting on the hospital bed, knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly. "Private Turner," Maggie said quietly from the doorway. "I'm Master Chief Sullivan. I heard you wanted to talk." Jessica looked up and tears spilled down her cheeks. "You understand, don't you? You understand why I can't do this anymore." "I do." Maggie sat on the edge of the bed. "I understand exactly what you're feeling. They died and I didn't. How is that fair? It's not fair. It's never fair. But it's not your fault either. I should have seen the IED, should have warned them, should have done something. Did you know it was there? No, but. Then you couldn't have stopped it. You couldn't have saved them. But you saved people. You're a hero." "No, Jessica, I'm a survivor, same as you. I saved some people and I lost others, and I've spent 20 years trying to figure out how to live with both of those truths." How do you live with it?" Maggie took her hand. "One day at a time. One breath at a time. Some days are harder than others. Some days the weight is so heavy I can barely get out of bed. But I get up anyway, because the Marines I saved deserve to know their sacrifice meant something. And the Marines who died deserve to be remembered by someone who's still alive. I can't stop seeing their faces. You never will. They'll be with you forever. But Jessica, that's not a curse. That's a gift. It means they mattered. It means their lives had meaning. And it means you carry them forward, honor them by living the life they didn't get to live." "I don't know if I can." "You can. I promise you can. Because you're a Marine. Because you're stronger than you think. Because you survived for a reason, even if you don't understand that reason yet." Rachel, who'd been standing quietly by the door, spoke up. "Can I say something?" Jessica nodded. "I'm Master Chief Sullivan's daughter, and for most of my life, I didn't understand why my mom was the way she was, why she was distant and closed off, why she couldn't talk about her service. I thought she didn't care enough about me." Rachel's voice was thick with emotion, "but I was wrong. She cared too much. She was carrying so much pain that she couldn't show me any more emotion without breaking completely." She walked closer to the bed. "What I'm trying to say is you're going to struggle. You're going to have hard days. You're going to push people away because it feels safer than letting them in. But please don't shut out the people who love you. Don't make them spend 20 years wondering what they did wrong. Let them help you carry the weight." Jessica was crying harder now. Maggie pulled her close, held her the way she'd held so many wounded Marines, and let her sob. "You're going to be okay," Maggie whispered. "I promise you're going to be okay." They stayed with Jessica until dawn, taking turns sitting with her, talking to her, just being present. The chaplain brought coffee and Danish pastries. Rachel texted Tommy, who texted the Veteran Center group, and by 6 a.m., there were a dozen veterans waiting in the hospital lobby, ready to support this young Marine they'd never met. When Jessica finally fell asleep exhausted from crying, Maggie stepped outside and found Admiral Harrison standing in the hallway. "How did you know I was here?" she asked. "I have my sources, and I knew you'd come." He handed her a coffee. "The secretary meeting is in 4 hours. You should get some rest." "I can't rest. Not after this." "Then don't. Use this. Use what you felt tonight when you talked to the secretary. Tell them that this is why legislation matters, why protection matters, why veterans need support, not judgment." Maggie took the coffee and drank deeply. She's 19 years old, a baby, and she's already broken. Then help her heal. Help all of them heal. That's your mission now, Master Chief. I'm retired. You'll never be retired. Not really. This is who you are. This is what you do. You save people. Sometimes with medicine and bandages, sometimes with words and presence. But you save people. That's your purpose. Maggie looked through the window at Jessica sleeping peacefully for the first time in who knew how long. Okay, she said. I'll talk to the secretary. I'll do the interviews. I'll be the face of whatever campaign they want. But I'm doing it for her. For every Jessica Turner out there who needs to know they're not alone. That's all anyone can ask. At 8 a.m., Maggie, Rachel, and Admiral Harrison climbed into a Navy sedan and drove to Washington. Maggie wore her best clothes, the same outfit she'd worn to court, and the medal around her neck. She'd stopped hiding it, stopped pretending to be ordinary. The Secretary of the Navy's office was in the Pentagon, all marble and brass and military bearing. Secretary Roberts was a former submarine officer, 58 years old, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. Master Chief Sullivan, thank you for coming. Mr. Secretary, I watched your interview, very powerful, very honest. He gestured to a chair. I want to propose something, a new position, veteran liaison to the Secretary of the Navy. You'd travel the country, speak at events, help bridge the gap between veterans and civilians. Help us do better. That's a full-time job. It is. With full benefits, GS-14 salary, and an office here in Washington. Maggie looked at Rachel, who was grinning, then at Admiral Harrison, who nodded encouragingly. I'd have to quit the hardware store. Yes, you would. And move to Washington. Or commute. We're flexible. And speak publicly, regularly. That's the job. Maggie thought about Jessica Turner sleeping in that hospital bed. Thought about Tommy and Frank and all the veterans at the center who needed someone to fight for them. Thought about the 20 years she'd spent hiding when she should have been helping. I'll do it, she said, on one condition. Name it. I want Jessica Turner assigned to my office. I want her working with me, helping me reach other young veterans. Give her a purpose. Give her a reason to stay alive. Secretary Roberts smiled. Done. When can you start? Give me 2 weeks to tie up loose ends. Then I'm yours. They shook hands and Maggie walked out of the Pentagon into the bright Virginia sun, feeling lighter than she had in 20 years. Rachel hugged her. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I'm scared. Good. That means it matters. Admiral Harrison clapped her on the shoulder, the good one. Welcome back to the fight, Master Chief. I never left, sir. I just didn't know what battlefield I was supposed to be on. You do now. The drive home was long and quiet, both of them lost in thought. But when they pulled into Maggie's driveway, there was a car waiting. Judge Morrison got out looking older and more tired than he had at the courthouse. Master Chief Sullivan, he said, I'm sorry to ambush you, but I wanted you to know I made good on my promise. The scholarship fund is established. $200,000 to start. It'll support children of Medal of Honor recipients for college. That's good of you. It's the least I could do. He hesitated. I also wanted to invite you to something. I'm teaching a course at the law school, Ethics and Judicial Responsibility. I'd like you to speak to my class, tell them what happened, show them the consequences of judging without understanding. Maggie studied his face. The shame and remorse looked genuine. Next month, if you're willing. I'll think about it. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. He started to leave, then turned back. Master Chief, you changed my life. You made me a better person. I know that sounds self-serving, but it's true. Thank you for that. After he drove away, Rachel said, Do you believe him? I don't know, but I believe in second chances. I have to because I've needed so many of them myself. That night, Maggie called Jessica Turner at the hospital. Private Turner, it's Master Chief Sullivan. I have a job offer for you. Jessica Turner sat across from Maggie in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the Pentagon, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. 2 weeks had passed since that night at Quantico. 2 weeks of therapy and medication and trying to convince herself she wanted to be alive. A job. Jessica's voice was hollow. Master Chief, I can barely get out of bed most days. How am I supposed to work? The same way I did. The same way every veteran with PTSD does. 1 hour at a time, one task at a time, one breath at a time. Maggie leaned forward. Jessica, I'm not offering you a desk job. I'm offering you a mission, a reason to keep fighting. What kind of mission? Helping other veterans, telling your story, showing young kids who are where you are right now that survival is possible. I don't have a story worth telling. Yes, you do. You have the same story I have. The story of someone who saw the worst humanity can do and lived to talk about it. That's powerful. That's important. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I'm only 19. I don't know anything. You know what combat feels like. You know what loss feels like. You know what it's like to wonder if you should have been the one who died. Maggie reached across the table and took her hand. That's more knowledge than most people acquire in a lifetime, and it's exactly what other veterans need to hear. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you get up and try again. That's what Marines do. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Then, when do I start JUM? Monday, 8 a.m. Pentagon Room 4C435. Bring coffee because we have a lot of work to do. For the first time since that night, Jessica smiled. It was small and fragile, but it was real. Monday morning arrived with the weight of new beginnings. Maggie stood outside her new office staring at the nameplate someone had installed over the weekend. Master Chief Petty Officer Margaret Sullivan, Veteran Liaison to the Secretary of the Navy. Rachel stood beside her holding a box of office supplies they'd bought at Target. You okay, Mom? Terrified. Good. You're in the right place then. The office was small but had a window overlooking the Potomac. Jessica arrived 10 minutes early looking nervous in pressed khakis and a polo shirt. She'd gained a little weight, looked healthier than she had at the hospital. Master Chief, she said, coming to attention. None of that. We're working together now. Call me Maggie. I can't do that. You're a Medal of Honor recipient. And you're a Marine who survived Fallujah. We're equals here. Maggie gestured to the desk she'd set up for Jessica. This is your workspace. Computer phone access to military databases. Your job is to help me identify veterans in crisis and get them connected with resources. How do I do that? We start with social media. We monitor veteran forums, Facebook groups, Reddit threads. We look for red flags, talk about suicide isolation, giving away possessions. When we find someone in trouble, we reach out. Jessica sat down, turned on the computer. This feels important. It is important. It's the most important work either of us will ever do. The first week was overwhelming. They found 17 veterans posting about suicide. Maggie called each one personally, sometimes talking for hours, sometimes just listening while someone cried. Jessica learned fast, taking notes, asking questions, slowly building confidence. On Friday, a young Army veteran named Marcus posted that he was going to end his life that night. Couldn't take the nightmares anymore. Couldn't face another day. Jessica saw it first. Master Chief Maggie, we have a problem. They traced his IP address to an apartment in Baltimore. Maggie called the local police while Jessica stayed online with him, typing messages, keeping him talking. Marcus, this is Jessica. I'm a Marine. I was in Fallujah last year. I know what you're feeling. No, you don't. I tried to kill myself 3 weeks ago. Pills. Someone stopped me. Saved my life. Now I'm helping save others. Let me help you. The police arrived at Marcus's apartment and found him sitting on his bed with a bottle of pills in his hand. He was crying. He was alive. Jessica burst into tears when they got the confirmation. We saved him. We actually saved him. We did. And we're going to save more. Maggie hugged her. This is why you're alive, Jessica. This is your purpose. The second week, Admiral Harrison scheduled Maggie for her first speaking engagement. A high school in suburban Virginia career day, 200 students who'd rather be anywhere else. I can't do this, Maggie said, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. I can't stand up in front of teenagers and pretend I have wisdom to share. Rachel, who'd taken a leave from her job to help her mother transition, adjusted Maggie's collar. You're not pretending anything. You're just telling the truth. What if they don't care? Then they don't care. But what if they do? What if one kid in that room is thinking about joining the military and your words help them understand what they're signing up for? What if one kid is struggling with something and your story shows them they're not alone? Maggie walked into that auditorium with her knees shaking. The students looked bored, scrolling their phones, talking to each other. The principal introduced her with practiced enthusiasm that fooled no one. Students were honored to have Master Chief Maggie Sullivan with us today. She's a Navy veteran and Medal of Honor recipient who's going to share her experiences in military service. Scattered obligatory applause. One kid yawned. Maggie stood at the podium and looked out at the sea of young faces. 16, 17 years old. The same age so many of her Marines had been. "I'm not going to tell you that military service is glamorous," she started. "I'm not going to show you a recruitment video or promise you adventure and excitement. I'm going to tell you the truth, and the truth is ugly." That got their attention. Phones started lowering, eyes lifted. When I was 34 years old, I ran into machine gun fire 6 times in one afternoon. I watched people die. I held a 19-year-old Marine while he bled out in my arms and begged me to save him. I couldn't. I took a bullet through my shoulder and shrapnel to my ribs, and I have nightmares about that day 20 years later. The room was silent now. I'm telling you this not to scare you away from service. I'm telling you this because if you're going to serve, you need to understand what you're signing up for. You're not signing up for glory. You're signing up for sacrifice. You're agreeing to put other people's lives before your own. You're accepting that you might come home, changed, broken, carrying wounds no one can see. A girl in the front row raised her hand. Why did you do it then? Why serve if it's so terrible? Because someone has to. Because freedom isn't free. I know that sounds like a bumper sticker, but it's true. Someone has to stand between civilians and danger. Someone has to be willing to make the hard choices, the impossible choices. And for 30 years, that someone was me. Another hand. Do you regret it? Maggie thought about James Morrison's daughter going to college, about David Chen's children calling her Grandma Maggie, about Jessica Turner finding purpose in her pain. No, I don't regret it. I regret the cost. I regret the nightmares and the scars and the years I spent hiding from my own daughter because I couldn't face my trauma. But the service itself, no. I'd do it again. After the talk, a skinny kid with bad acne approached her nervously. "Ma'am, I'm joining the Marines next year. My recruiter said it'll be easy, just follow orders and stay out of trouble. But you're saying something different. Your recruiter is lying to you. Not maliciously, he needs to make quota, but he's not telling you the whole truth." Maggie looked him in the eye. "What's your name?" "Tyler. Tyler Chen." "Chen. Any relation to David Chen?" "That's my dad. He said I should talk to you if I'm serious about this." Maggie's heart clenched. David's son. The child who existed because she'd sealed a sucking chest wound while taking fire. "Tyler, your dad is a good man. He knows what service costs because he paid that price. If you're going to follow in his footsteps, you need to go in with your eyes open. Will you help me? Will you tell me what I need to know?" "Yes. Give me your email. We'll stay in touch. And when you finish boot camp, you come see me. I'll make sure you have resources, support someone who understands." He left with tears in his eyes and gratitude on his face. Rachel, who'd watched from the back of the auditorium, found Maggie afterward. "Mom, that was incredible. You connected with them. Really connected." "One kid. I connected with one kid." "That's one more than you reached yesterday. And tomorrow you'll reach more. That's how change happens, one person at a time." The third week brought a crisis. A veteran in Texas barricaded himself in his house with a gun, threatening to shoot anyone who came near. Local police called the VA. The VA called the Pentagon. The Pentagon called Maggie. "Master Chief, we need you in Dallas. Tonight." This Marine is former 2nd Battalion 7th Marines. He served in Ramadi in 2005. Severe PTSD, multiple suicide attempts. He's asking for a corpsman. He's asking for you specifically. He knows who I am. He saw your interview. Says he trusts you because you understand. Maggie was on a plane 2 hours later, Jessica beside her. They arrived at midnight to find a suburban street blocked off, SWAT teams in position, neighbors evacuated. The Marine's name was Staff Sergeant William Torres, 42 years old, 3 tours, divorced, estranged from his kids. The incident commander, a tired-looking police captain named Rodriguez, met them at the perimeter. Master Chief Sullivan. Thank God. We've been negotiating for 6 hours. He won't talk to anyone except you. What does he want? To be heard, to be seen, to matter. Rodriguez looked exhausted. Same thing they all want. Maggie approached the house alone, hands visible, moving slowly. Jessica and Rachel watched from behind a police car, both terrified. Staff Sergeant Torres, Maggie called out. It's Master Chief Sullivan. You wanted to talk to a corpsman. I'm here. A window cracked open. You're really her, the Medal of Honor corpsman. I'm really her, and I'm really here. Can I come closer? Why would you do that? I've got a gun. Because you're not going to shoot me. You're a Marine. Marines don't shoot corpsmen. A long silence. Then, come to the door, slowly. She walked to the front door, each step measured and careful. The door opened a crack. Torres looked through the gap, hollow-eyed, unshaven, holding a pistol, but not pointing it at her. I saw your interview, he said. You talked about the nightmares, about seeing their faces. I do, every night. Me too, every single night. I can't make them stop. I know, I can't either. But William, the answer isn't ending your life. The answer is learning to carry them, learning to honor them by staying alive. I'm tired of carrying them. Then let me help you. Let me share the weight. That's what corpsmen do. We carry wounded Marines. You're wounded. Let me carry you for a while. His hand shook on the gun. I don't deserve help. Yes, you do. You served. You sacrificed. You earned every bit of help this country can give you. I hurt people. I did things in Ramadi that... His voice broke. I can't forgive myself. You don't have to forgive yourself today. You just have to stay alive today. Tomorrow we'll worry about tomorrow. What's the point? The point is that there's a young Marine in my office, 19 years old, Fallujah veteran, who tried to kill herself 3 weeks ago. She's alive because I stopped her, and now she's helping me save other veterans. She's finding purpose in her pain. You can too. I'm not strong like you. I'm not strong. I'm stubborn. There's a difference. And William, you're a staff sergeant. You led Marines in combat. You know about stubborn. He almost smiled. Almost. If I put the gun down, they're going to arrest me, lock me up. They're going to take you to a hospital, get you help, and I'm going to make sure you get the treatment you need. That's my promise to you, Marine to Marine. Why do you care? Because you matter. Because your life has value. Because I didn't spend 30 years saving Marines just to lose one now. Slowly, so slowly, it seemed to take hours, he lowered the gun, set it on the floor, opened the door fully. Maggie stepped inside and wrapped her arms around him while he sobbed. The SWAT team swarmed in, secured the weapon, but Maggie didn't let go. She held him the way she'd held so many others, and she whispered, "You're going to be okay. I promise you're going to be okay." They flew back to Washington at dawn. Jessica hadn't slept, was wired with adrenaline and fear and relief. How did you do that? How did you know what to say? I didn't. I just said what I needed to hear 20 years ago when I was standing on the edge. Were you standing on the edge? Maggie looked out the plane window at the sunrise. More times than I can count. The only reason I'm still here is because I had people who wouldn't let me fall. Now it's my turn to catch others. The 4th week brought unexpected news. Judge Morrison's ethics class wanted Maggie to speak, but so did 3 other law schools, and 2 medical schools, and a police academy. Suddenly, everyone wanted to hear from the corpsman who'd become a symbol of hidden heroism. I can't do all these, Maggie told Secretary Roberts in their weekly meeting. Then pick the ones that matter most. But Maggie, you're having an impact. Applications to Navy hospital corpsman training are up 40%. VA counseling appointments are up 20%. You're changing the conversation about veterans and mental health. I'm just talking. You're doing more than talking. You're showing people what courage looks like. Real courage. The kind that doesn't end when the shooting stops. That weekend, Maggie drove back to her hometown for the first time in a month. The Veterans Center had organized a welcome home event. When she arrived, there were 200 people waiting. Veterans, families, community members. Even some who doubted her at first. Dorothy wheeled herself forward and handed Maggie a framed photograph. It was her son, Jeffrey, young and proud in his uniform. "He'd be so proud of you," Dorothy said through tears. "You're doing what he would have wanted, taking care of veterans, making sure they're not forgotten." Tommy approached with a young woman beside him. "Doc, this is my girlfriend Sarah. She's the first person I've been able to let close since I got back. I told her about you, about what you've done for me. She says thank you for giving her a chance to know the real me." Frank Martinez pulled Maggie aside. "The VFW National Headquarters called. They want to give you their highest civilian honor. Normally it's reserved for, tell them no. I don't need more awards. I need them to fund better mental health programs. Tell them to put their money there." "Maggie." "Frank, I mean it. No more ceremonies, no more plaques, just results, just veterans getting help." Richard Brennan appeared at the edge of the crowd looking uncertain. His wife was with him, and both of their children. They'd been volunteering at the VA hospital every weekend, just as Maggie had challenged them to do. "Master Chief," Brennan said quietly, "I wanted you to know I've been working with terminal veterans, holding their hands, listening to their stories. You were right about everything. I didn't understand, but I'm learning." His daughter Emma stepped forward. "Miss Sullivan, I started a club at my school. We collect care packages for deployed troops and visit veterans' homes. Because of you. Because you showed us that service matters." Maggie felt something crack open in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or faith. The sense that change was actually possible. Rachel found her an hour later standing alone near the memorial wall where names of local fallen veterans were engraved. "Mom, there's someone here who wants to meet you." A woman in her 70s approached, leaning on a cane, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Master Chief Sullivan, I'm Patricia Morrison, James's mother." Maggie's breath caught. "Mrs. Morrison, I've wanted to meet you for 20 years, to thank you for giving me back my son. He tells me you still blame yourself for his leg. I should have been faster." "Stop." Patricia's voice was firm. "My son is alive. He has a wife and children. He teaches history and coaches basketball. He has a full, beautiful life because of you. Don't you dare apologize for that." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is a letter James wrote you 10 years ago. He never sent it because he didn't know how to find you. He's been carrying it ever since, waiting for the right moment. I think now is that moment." Maggie opened the envelope with shaking hands. James's handwriting was neat, precise, teacher-like. "Dear Doc, I know you think about my leg. I know you carry guilt about the choice you had to make, save the leg or save my life. You chose my life and I'm grateful every single day. But I want you to know something. Losing my leg gave me something unexpected perspective. I don't take anything for granted. I cherish every moment with my family. I live with intention and purpose. I'm a better man, a better husband, a better father because I understand how precious life is. You didn't take something from me. You gave me everything. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure that sacrifice was worth it. Thank you for my life. Thank you for my family. Thank you for being brave enough to run into the fire when everyone else was running away. Semper Fi, James Morrison." Maggie couldn't see through her tears. Rachel held her while she cried, while 20 years of guilt finally began to release its hold. The 5th week, Maggie returned to Fallujah. Not physically, she'd never go back there, but emotionally. Secretary Roberts arranged for her to connect via video call with the current Marines stationed in Iraq, many of them serving in the same areas she had. She sat in her Pentagon office, Jessica beside her, and looked at the faces of young Marines on the screen. They were so young. Children playing at war. "Master Chief Sullivan." The company commander said, "My Marines wanted to hear from you. Wanted to know how you handled the stress, the fear, the impossible decisions." Maggie looked at those young faces and saw herself, saw James and David and Maria, saw Jessica, saw every veteran she'd ever helped. The truth is, I didn't handle it well. I survived it, but I didn't handle it. I buried the trauma and let it poison me for 20 years. I pushed away people who loved me. I hid who I was because I was ashamed of what I'd become. The Marines were silent, listening. But here's what I learned. Here's what I want you to understand. When you get home, and you will get home, you need to talk about it. You need to ask for help. You need to let people in even when every instinct tells you to shut them out. Because isolation is the enemy. Shame is the enemy. The belief that you should be able to handle this alone, that's the enemy. A young corpsman, female, maybe 22, raised her hand. "Master Chief, what if we can't save everyone? What if we have to make choices about who lives and who dies?" Maggie's throat tightened. "Then you make those choices. You do your best in an impossible situation. You save who you can save, and afterward you forgive yourself for being human, for not being God, for not being able to do the impossible." How long does that take, the forgiving yourself part? I'm still working on it. 20 years later, I'm still working on it. But I'm getting better. And you will too. After the call ended, Jessica turned to Maggie. "That corpsman, she reminded me of you. She reminded me of you, of all of us." Maggie stood and walked to the window. "Jessica, I need to tell you something. I'm recommending you for early promotion, and I'm putting you in charge of our new peer support program." "Master Chief, I'm only 19. And you're already saving lives. You're already making a difference. Age doesn't matter. Heart matters. And you have more heart than most people twice your age." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "I'm still scared. Every day I'm scared." "Good. That means you're paying attention. That means you understand what's at stake." Maggie turned to face her. "But Jessica, being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave. It means the opposite. Bravery is being scared and doing it anyway." 6 months after that day in the VFW hall, Maggie stood on the steps of the Capitol building. Congress had passed the Veterans Protection Act legislation that provided better mental health funding, stronger protections for veterans facing discrimination, and mandatory training for law enforcement and judicial officials on military culture and PTSD. The press called it Maggie's Law, though she'd fought that name. It wasn't about her. It was about every veteran who'd been overlooked, dismissed, or disrespected. Admiral Harrison stood beside her, along with Commander Hayes Marcus Washington, and a delegation of Medal of Honor recipients from every branch. James Morrison was there with his family, David Chen and his mother, Maria Garcia's widower and son, Dorothy in her wheelchair, Tommy and Frank, and dozens of veterans from the center, and Rachel, always Rachel, standing close enough to touch. The president spoke, cameras rolling, reporters taking notes. "This legislation honors not just our Medal of Honor recipients, but every veteran who has served. It recognizes that heroism takes many forms, and that our obligation to those who served doesn't end when they take off the uniform." Maggie was asked to say a few words. She stepped to the microphone and looked at the crowd. 20 years ago, I ran into machine gun fire because Marines were dying and I was the only one who could save them. I didn't think about it. I didn't plan it. I just moved. That's what corpsmen do. We run toward danger because someone has to." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Today we're facing a different kind of danger. The danger of forgetting. The danger of overlooking the veterans in our communities. The danger of assuming we know what a hero looks like, what service looks like, what sacrifice looks like. Her voice grew stronger. "I'm not a hero because I wore a Medal of Honor. I'm a survivor. I'm someone who learned how to carry an impossible weight and keep moving forward. And I'm here to tell you that there are millions of veterans out there doing the same thing, carrying weight you can't see, fighting battles you'll never know about, surviving when survival feels impossible." She looked directly at the cameras. "See them, respect them, support them. Don't wait until they're in crisis. Don't wait until they're standing on the edge. Reach out now. Ask how they're doing. Listen when they answer. Be the person who won't let them fall. The crowd erupted in applause, but Maggie wasn't finished. And to every veteran watching this, every person who served and came home, changed you matter. Your service matters. Your struggles matter. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are seen. You are valued. And you are loved. She stepped back from the microphone. Rachel hugged her. Admiral Harrison saluted her. And somewhere in the crowd, Jessica Turner stood with William Torres, both of them alive, both of them fighting, both of them proof that survival was possible. That night, Maggie sat on her back porch with Scout at her feet and Rachel beside her. The medal lay on the table between them, catching the porch light. "Are you happy, Mom?" Rachel asked. "I don't know if happy is the right word, but I'm at peace. For the first time in 20 years, I'm at peace. Because of the legislation. Because I finally understand something. I spent 2 decades thinking the medal represented my failure, the Marines. I couldn't save the choices I had to make. But it doesn't represent failure. It represents hope. It represents the idea that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that sacrifice matters, that love is stronger than fear. That's beautiful. It's true. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." Rachel took her hand. "We're going to prove it together." Maggie looked at the stars overhead, the same stars that had watched over Fallujah, that had witnessed every battle, every loss, every triumph. She thought about James Morrison teaching history to high school students, about David Chen's children learning to ride bikes, about Maria Garcia's son growing up without his mother but knowing she'd been a hero, about Jessica Turner finding purpose in her pain, about William Torres getting the help he needed, about every veteran she'd touched, every life she'd saved, every person she'd helped carry their weight. The medal wasn't hers. It never had been. It belonged to all of them, to everyone who'd served and survived, to everyone who was still fighting, to everyone who refused to give up even when giving up felt like the only option. She picked up the medal and held it to the light, watching it shine. Then she stood and walked inside to her office where files waited for dozens of veterans who needed help. There was work to do. There was always work to do. And for the first time in her life, Maggie Sullivan was ready to do it. Not because she was a hero, not because she wore a medal, but because she understood what every corpsman knows. Someone has to run toward the danger. Someone has to carry the wounded. Someone has to refuse to give up, even when the battle seems lost. She'd spent 30 years in uniform doing that work, and she'd spend the rest of her life doing it in civilian clothes. The mission hadn't changed. The enemy was different, not bullets and bombs, but stigma and shame, and the invisible wounds that killed from the inside. But the principle remained the same. Run toward danger. Save who you can save. Never give up. Never quit. Never leave a fallen comrade behind. That was the corpsman's creed. That was her life. And that was why she wore the medal, not as decoration or distinction, but as a promise. A promise that she would keep fighting, keep saving, keep refusing to let anyone fall. Because that's what heroes do. And Maggie Sullivan, whether she believed it or not, was exactly that, a hero who'd finally learned to see herself the way others always had, and who would spend every remaining day of her life earning the honor that had been given to her in blood sacrifice and the unbreakable bonds of service.